My name is Frank Walker. This is the May 8th, 2021 PBLA Judicial Forum. I am serving as the host. At this time, we are waiting on one of the moderators. If they do not appear or run behind, I'll go ahead and get us started with the first candidate. Now, a couple of ground rules and announcements. The rules are simple. Everyone has 5 minutes to answer and respond to questions from the moderator. And they'll get a 1 minute, a 30-second, and a 10-second notation from the timekeeper. Timekeeper, can you put that in the chat as an example of what you will put to the candidates, what they will see? 1 minute, 30 seconds, and 10 seconds. And then time. All right, only spectators are permitted in the main room so that it gives everyone the same opportunity to answer the questions, and not any people can't scout out the questions and report back to the candidates. So by being in the room, you are notating that you are not part of any candidates forum or any candidates practice or any candidates campaign. We are streaming live on Facebook with the PBLA. Please place your contact information in the box if you have any questions for the moderator or any of the candidates afterwards, and I will encourage them to put their information in the chat box also. Let's see. The questions asked by the moderator will be asked only. They will not be explained. They can be repeated, but they won't be explained. These are pre-selected questions that were given to the moderator, and they will just read them outright. So just please answer them as best as possible. The order of the candidates is in the chat box with 1 through 43. Obviously, if you're a candidate and you're in the first hour, you don't have to sit around. You're not expected to sit around for the entire 4 hours. So I'm going to check on the moderator. All right, Lisa, we are waiting on our moderator, but I'm going to go ahead and start first until they arrive to keep us on time. So please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you are seeking and tell us your bar rating from the ACBA.
Well, let me turn these notifications off. My name's Lisa Middleman. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas, and my bar association, Allegheny County Bar Association recommendation is recommended.
Okay. Second question to you, other than bail reform, please detail 3 specific ways how you as a judge can reform the criminal justice system.
Okay, I do have 3 important plans, I think. One is to partner with the University of Pittsburgh and Carlow University to bring social work interns from their Masters of Social Work programs into the courtrooms, because I believe that we can support victims, witnesses, people who suffer from intellectual and developmental disabilities, people who are on the autism spectrum, and just traumatize people who come through the system by providing them with a social worker in the courtroom to provide them with supports, and also to advise the court on best practices and trauma-informed practices on how to help those people. The other way that I think is very important to reform the system is probation and parole reform. Currently, 80% of the people who are detained on probation or parole violations are detained on technical violations. That means they haven't committed another crime. That just means they failed to report on time, they failed to report an address, perhaps a urine screen came up positive for drugs, and we currently, this criminal justice system automatically detains those folks. We can stop doing that immediately. Additionally, we can stop sentencing people to excessive periods of probation and parole. The research shows that if a person is going to recidivate, which means reoffend, that usually happens within the very first year of probation or parole. So we don't need these lengthy sentences of probation or parole for most people. The third way is to work with the other judges to remove the condition of pleading guilty of a crime in order to get into our diversionary courts. Currently, Veterans Court, Drug Court, DUI Court, every single specialty court except for ARD requires a guilty plea or a conviction in order to get the services that are necessary. So while you're raising somebody up by giving them the treatment and the supports that they need, and that's fantastic, you're also dragging them down, causing them difficulty with housing, difficulty with custody potentially, and losing their jobs by requiring them to plead guilty first. We don't have to require that conviction. We can just reward people at the end of successful completion of the program with a withdrawal of the charges. So those are my 3 ways.
Thank you. And last, I'm sure you've heard many candidates speak about criminal justice reform over the past months. However, as an experienced public defender, please detail possible reform efforts that sound good, but are actually beyond the authority of the judge for the Court of Common Pleas.
Eliminating cash bail from the entire system. First of all, cash bail should be eliminated, and I believe it should be eliminated, but common pleas court judges aren't the ones who set initial bail. That's magisterial district judges. So when people talk about that, that's impractical. Another thing that I've heard people talk about is bringing the courts to the community and having court in each individual community. That's not financially or logistically possible. And we have community courts, they are magistrates. Another thing that people talk about is making things more convenient for victims and witnesses by having weekend court. That also is not financially or logistically possible. I don't think people who actually work in the criminal justice system realize that for every criminal case, there's a district attorney, there's a defense attorney, there's courtroom staff, there's prothonotary staff, there's sheriffs, there are building guards, and all of those people to be paid overtime would be financially not feasible. So there are a lot of things that people talk about that cannot be done, but there are a lot of things that can be done. And I think that we have to focus on those and focus on people whose judicial philosophy would be to make the effort and to try to do everything possible to make changes, not just say, no, we can't do that, so let's just keep on doing things the horrible way that we have been doing them.
All right, thank you. That's all the questions we have. Make sure you put your information in the chat box for some of our viewers and people who are watching this later on so they can contact you and your campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
First question to you, please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you are seeking and tell us your bar rating from the ACBA.
Is that for me, Attorney Walker?
Yes, that's for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for organizing this. My name is Nicole Henry-Taylor. I'm a candidate for the Court of Common Pleas in Allegheny County. My bar rating is highly recommended from the Allegheny County Bar Association. I want to tell your audience, because this is the Pittsburgh Black Lawyers Alliance, which I am a member of, that in the whole history of Allegheny County, there have only been 4 Black women elected to the Court of Common Pleas. We currently only have 1 Black woman, our President Judge Kim Berkeley Clark, who will be probably retiring after some time. So we will be left with 0 Black female judges on our bench. And that is not acceptable because, as we all know, representation matters. I have been a practicing attorney for 25 years, focusing on family and criminal law. I have worked in all 4 divisions: family, criminal, civil, and orphans court. Those courts are so important because they affect all of us and all of our families, whether it's custody, children and youth services cases, protection from abuse, divorce, guardianships of our incapacitated people, or landlord tenants. They're so very important, and this election is very important. With 9 seats open, it is a very historic time, and we need everyone to be engaged. I am currently the Director of Diversity for Duquesne University School of Law, and I also am in private practice, which I told you about. I am a former assistant district attorney, but what I am so proud of is that when I did that role, I handled the mental health court program, dealing with individuals who have co-occurring disorders, mental health problems, intellectual disabilities, and drug and alcohol problems. And we need to focus on getting a continuum of care and and systems and support in place for those types of people in our system. Also, I am very concerned with children being tried as adults. We know that there are children being tried under Act 33 in our adult criminal division. There are Black children and other children in that jail doing their homework. And that is something we should be thinking about and making sure that we are providing the utmost supports for our families and our children. And we do not forget about them in this conversation as we talk about criminal justice reform. Language. Yes, go ahead.
My apologies. That was just a brief introduction about the position you were seeking. We actually have some follow-up questions if you may.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I wasn't real clear on the format.
I didn't explain that quickly. So in the remaining time, please tell us 3 specific steps you can take as a judge to ensure that the jury pool in Allegheny County is diverse.
So one step that we could take is, instead of only trying to find jurors from places like driver's license, because not all people in our county drive, trying to look at some other places where we can have lists to look at diverse jury pools. The other thing is we need civic engagement. We have people who may be willing, ready, able to be on juries. However, they need to understand the importance of juries. And so things like going out to the community, doing it on social media. Philadelphia has a wonderful organization who has been working on looking at doing some of these things, like putting it on websites. The other thing we could do is making sure that we provide information on being on the jury in different formats, such as texting, such as emails, and other ways of reaching jurors. And lastly, making it more comfortable and letting people know that we want diversity in the jury pool, particularly after what happened last year with the particular judge who stepped down.
Thank you. In the remaining time, could you answer, I think we have 1 minute left. How does your experience as diversity director at Duquesne add to your qualifications to be fair and an impartial judge?
Well, the Duquesne University School of Law has a Puritan tradition. They started as a night school and bringing in people who were disenfranchised. That is what I love about Duquesne. I get to do that role when I'm recruiting kids from all over, from historically Black school, when I'm bringing kids from FAME, Black student scholars and others, and working with getting, we need to make sure our profession is diversified, and that will add to value, to decision making, to lawyers who can advocate, and having clients who have lawyers that look like them. So I believe that in understanding implicit bias, systemic bias, and the need for representation through my work at Duquesne University School of Law, that helps me to be qualified, and also to have the temperament and the lived experience and knowledge to know that we need inclusion and diversity in our court system.
Thank you very much. That is your time. I appreciate it. Please leave your contact information in the chat for others to contact your campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will turn it over. I see our moderator, Mikey Hood, has joined us. I will turn it over to her, and I will let in Jimmy Sheets for the next interview.
Jimmy, are you there?
I just let him in. He should be coming in. Yep, he's coming in.
Hello.
Hi, Jimmy. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mikey Hood, and I'll ask you a few questions here. So please introduce yourself and tell us what position you are seeking, and tell us your bar rating from the ACBA.
Sure. My name is Jimmy Sheets. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas in Allegheny County, and the Allegheny County Bar Association has rated me not recommended at this time.
Okay. And you've stated that you've represented plaintiffs and defendants during PFA hearings. Can you tell me about that?
I'm sorry, you cut out there right at the end.
Tell me a little bit about that.
I'm sorry?
I said, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. I have been asked by Neighborhood Legal Services if I would represent plaintiffs on PFA cases on a pro bono basis. The only compensation I received is that Neighborhood Legal Services holds a, once a year, they hold a CLE at one of the bigger firms downtown, and I could attend that free of charge. So I would do that sometimes 3, sometimes 6 times a month, representing plaintiffs attempting to get a PFA. I have also, of course, as a criminal defense attorney, represented defendants who were the defendant on a PFA action.
Okay, thank you very much. And here's the last question. Do you think the laws and process are biased against the defendants, which are overwhelmingly males? And if so, please provide the top 3 things you will do as a judge to ensure that both sides are treated fairly in PFA proceedings.
Well, do I think that the law is unfair to male gendered people in PFA proceedings? Is that the gist of the question?
Yes.
I don't know if the law as written is unfair, but I will say this. I have on more than a few, on many occasions, represented someone in a PFA proceeding where the PFA proceeding was being used for something other than protection from abuse, whether it was custody, whether it was simply to have the person removed from their home. The allegations, I don't believe, were substantial enough to qualify as a protection from abuse order. And I think that when it, for that purpose, I think it's extremely important that men and women feel safe from someone that's abusing them. And I think when that process is used by someone for nefarious means, i.e. ensuring custody of their child or removing someone from their home, it lessens the PFA and its severity in those instances where it is absolutely essential to protect people. So I think as a judge, what I would do is before a PFA is approved, look more closely at exactly what the allegations are and whether or not there's anything to substantiate them. And more importantly, whether or not there is something there that clearly expresses a motive other than being protected from an abusive person.
Good. Anything else that you would do to ensure that both sides are treated fairly in the proceedings?
I think the only way anybody, a judge or any other person, you, me, can hear 2 sides of a story and be fair and equitable is to listen with an open mind and let both parties completely express what they're trying to say.
Okay. Conclude your questions. Thank you, Mr. Sheets. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You also, Jimmy, please leave your information in the chat for people to contact your campaign.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Frank.
No problem. Thanks. Next, we will have Zeke Rediker, and I'll let Zeke into the room.
Hi, Zeke. I think you're muted.
You know, you would think after all of these Zoom meetings, I would finally know how to unmute myself.
It's hard to get it right. Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mikey. And please introduce yourself and tell us what position you are seeking and also your bar rating from the ACBA.
So my name is Zeke Rediker. I'm an attorney at Reed Smith. I'm a former federal court clerk. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas, and my bar rating is not recommended at this time.
Okay. And so please tell us about a memorable moment in court when you were representing a client in a trial by including the type of case, proceeding, and what made it memorable.
Yeah, so I handled a series of trials that were very interesting and in certain ways groundbreaking. You guys might remember when Uber was first introduced into the United States, you know, probably starting about 10 years ago, but all of these different jurisdictions throughout the United States were having trouble actually dealing with rules that would make it legal, Washington, D.C. included. I was practicing at Reed Smith's Washington, D.C. office at the time, and all of these Uber drivers, there was a service called Uber Black, were getting tickets in the amount of thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars because they were treated as unlicensed taxi cab operators. And so what we did was we came in and we had a series of trials, many trials, but I had at least 8, 9, possibly 10 trials related to this matter alone that involved trying to legalize Uber Black by making both constitutional and regulatory arguments before the DC state courts, so as to try to get the DC Taxi Cab Commission to create a regulatory scheme that would allow Uber to operate legally within the District of Columbia. And after winning a number of those trials, we eventually forced a global settlement with the DC Taxi Cab Commission that fully paved the way for Uber to be completely legal in Washington, DC.
Okay, thank you. And last question, you run a campaign on criminal justice reform. Other than bail reform, what top 3 issues do you identify as needing reform in the criminal justice system? And how will you as a judge address them?
Sure. So the first one, I think, is sentencing. You know, we need judges to use their discretion because, as all of you know, judges are not lawmakers, they're not policymakers. They interpret the law and they apply the law. But that doesn't mean that judges don't have an enormous amount of discretion to actually, you know, deal with people and litigants and defendants as human beings in front of them. And so I think what judges need to do when it comes to sentencing is they need to get to know people in as short of amount of time as possible. I remember I clerked for the federal trial court in New York City, and I remember times watching my judge prepare for a sentencing and the ways that she would pore over the record, spending hours and hours and hours on actually trying to get to know the person that she was about to sentence. I take my cue from that. I think a lot of judges in Allegheny County shoot from the hip, especially when it comes to criminal sentencing, and I don't think that's the right way to go about it. So deliberative sentencing, where judges actually try to get to know the people in front of them. The second thing that I would do is I think that we need a restorative justice program in Allegheny County. I think it would work best as applied to juveniles or potentially first-time offenders. And what would happen in these situations is you would have the person who committed the offense, you would have the offender, you would have community members, because frequently when crimes are committed, communities are affected as well. You would have social service providers, and then you would have either a trained facilitator or judges would be able to get this training, and you could convene a circle whereby everybody comes together, holds each other accountable, tries to get real justice for the person who was wrong, and tries to create a path forward for the person who committed the offense. There's a great saying, nothing stops a bullet like a job. And I really think that social service providers need to be more involved in our courts. And the third thing is actually a non-legal thing, is that judges need to be visible and accountable to the communities they serve. This goes hand in hand with criminal justice. I think that judges need to do community service on a regular basis, especially in marginalized communities. I've done a lot of that work as a community advocate, maybe a public education program for the court, especially so that we could expose kids who aren't exposed to judging and lawyers as a profession on a regular basis. And all of these 3 things, I think, could further the ends of criminal justice reform.
Okay, thank you so much, Zeke. If you could leave your information in the chat, your campaign information, that would be great.
Absolutely. And just to clarify one thing, so the bar rating, I'm entering my 8th year of practice. The Allegheny County Bar Association asks that attorneys have 10 years of practice, and they stressed with me that it was not the quality of my experience, which includes being an attorney at Reed Smith, former federal court clerk, and practicing in a lot of different spaces. It was solely the number of years. So I'm hoping that all of you guys will look at the quality and not just quantity of my experience in the way that you evaluate candidates.
Thank you. Thank you, Jake.
Absolutely. And nice to see you again, Frank. Hope all is well.
You also. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
We have Pat Sweeney.
Hi, Pat. Good afternoon.
How you doing?
I'm great. My name is Mikey Hood. I have a few questions for you here. So please introduce yourself and tell us what position you are seeking, and tell us your bar rating from the ACBA.
My name is Patrick Sweeney. I am an assistant public defender with Allegheny County, and I am seeking the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County Common Pleas Judge.
And so, being a longtime public defender, please provide 3 examples of how you can assure voters that you will not let your background as a public defender prejudice your decisions.
I think one of the things I pride myself on is having a reputation in terms of relating to my adversaries in the district attorney's office, as well as other attorneys in the court system. I've got I believe, a pretty good relationship with them and a pretty good reputation among them for being someone who's fair to deal with and straightforward and forthright and an honest broker, if you will, when I'm representing my clients. I'm a zealous advocate, but I'm not an unfair advocate. And I think that's an important facet of one's personality, one's practice to have as a defense attorney, but also it's vital when you're on the bench, because you want to make sure that everybody who comes before you is treated fairly. I've represented a lot of people over the years, obviously, who are accused of committing crimes, but a lot of my clients have been victims of crimes. And sometimes they're victims of crimes in the very same incident or episode that produced the case that got them involved in the court system in the first place and got my representation involved. So I understand from their perspective and being an advocate for them and a go-between for them and the prosecution, what they're going through as occasionally a crime victim. And so I think I would bring that experience with me to the bench. Likewise, I point to one of my probably best cases, some of the best work I did as a public defender. Strangely enough, I was representing a former police officer who was accused of murder. It was a case that got a lot of publicity at the time. There was a friend of his. He was drinking in a bar. Both of them were very, very drunk, both over 0.2 blood alcohol content. They fought over my client's gun, which he foolishly brought with him into the bar. He followed his training as a police officer and a former Marine and shot and killed the individual. District Attorney's Office argued malice based on the number of shots that were fired. We actually, I think I'm the only public defender who's called a police use of force expert as a defense witness. But our witness testified very credibly. My client testified very credibly. It was a strange position to be in, representing to the court, the police training on behalf of my own client. But that's what was required of me to represent my client in that case, and I did it zealously, and I obviously got a very good result for him, and he testified very well on his own behalf. But that's the kind of experience that I've had in my 23 years as a public defender, in terms of fair dealing and being able to see both sides of things. I think that's necessary as a defense attorney, and it's absolutely necessary as a judge.
Okay, thank you. And last question, I'm sure you've heard many candidates speak about criminal justice reform over the past few months. As an experienced public defender, please detail possible reform efforts that sound good, but are beyond the authority of a judge for the Court of Common Pleas. Well,
one of the things that is often talked about in forums such as this, and we've been through a lot of these Zoom meetings, is alternative sentencing and drug treatment and mental health treatment. And I am certainly an advocate for that. A huge percentage of my clients are afflicted with both mental health disorders and addiction issues of drugs and alcohol. Very often they are medicating their mental health issues with drugs and alcohol. I would very much like to promote more alternative sentencings in terms of alternative housing, bring in more mental health treatment into the system, but I can't, with the stroke of a pen, create more drug facilities and mental health facilities. Very often I have clients sitting in the jail right now waiting to go to a facility and there may not be a bed available. And that's somebody who's been approved already. No reform was necessary. The judge who sentenced them wants them to go to a rehab facility, wants them to go to a mental health inpatient treatment, and there just isn't enough room. Funding is a huge issue. Now, funding is something that can be influenced by judges to some extent, because the grants that fund these programs, what informs them are I hate to use the word stakeholders, but people like judges who preside over drug courts and mental health courts have a lot of say in how those grants are fashioned in the future. They might get a 3-year grant to fund a certain program. When that expires, they're going to change the parameters of it. And the judges that participate in those programs have a lot of input in terms of how it can be improved and how it can be changed. The other thing I would bring up, what I have seen just since the cash bail issue has become, to the forefront, and we've done a lot to almost eliminate cash bail for a lot of people in this county already. What I am seeing is more of my clients being held without bond. Usually when somebody's given $100,000 bond or something absurd, the real intent by the magistrate was to hold that person in jail until trial. If cash bail is not around, they will simply be held without bond. So some decision will be reached that they shouldn't be let out of jail. And I'm seeing that more and more in terms of a percentage of my clients that are being held simply without bond. That is sort of the unintended consequence of getting rid of cash bail. It's a little more honest and forthright because you're actually saying what you really mean when you give a person a $200,000 bond. You're saying that you just don't want them to get out. But every now and then, some of my clients, their grandparents might put up their house and they can post a $50,000 bond, but most of my clients cannot. So I'm very much an advocate for getting rid of cash bail for the most part. But there is sort of that unintended consequence, which we're already seeing right now.
Great. Thank you very much, Pat. If you could leave your information, your campaign information in the chat, that would be very helpful.
Mike, I'm going to remind them of the time. Welcome. Before we get started, make sure you look at to your right or left at the chat box for the time. You're going to notice that 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and time. Mikey, turn it over to you.
Giuseppe, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, great. Your screen says Francis. I was confused.
Let me change that. Yeah, I logged in under. He sent me the link. So let me fix that real quick. All done.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. My name is Mikey Hood. I have a few questions for you here.
Mikey.
So please introduce yourself, tell us what position you are seeking, and tell us your bar rating from the ACBA, please.
Sure. My name is Giuseppe Rosselli. I am a career criminal defense attorney. I am seeking a position on the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County, and I was recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association.
Being a longtime defense attorney, please provide 3 examples on how you can assure voters that you will not let your background as a criminal defense attorney prejudice your decisions.
Okay, so it's a great question, except the first time it's been asked of me. So when we talk about impartiality, when we talk about things that require thoughtful decisions to be made as to how matters are to be resolved, obviously we bring our professional experience to the table as part of that conversation, but we also bring our personal lives to that conversation. And it's hard for me to separate my personal life from my professional life because they're so intertwined. I mean, the reason why I'm a criminal defense attorney is because how I was brought up. I've represented everybody from people who had one bad night to people who are career criminals. And I think part of the job of a judge is being able to determine who the bad people really are. And, you know, I've been asked throughout the course of this campaign whether or not I could incarcerate. And the answer is, of course I could. The problem is we as a system have spent far too much time perfecting the incarceration of our own people, and not enough time focused on building them up so they can break from the cycle. So 3 separate instances. You know, I've represented murderers. I understand. I've represented rapists. I understand bad people from good people who had a bad night. And that's a general statement. I've handled sentencing for a juvenile who was convicted of first-degree murder. And going through that process gives you a full understanding as to the difficult decisions that judges have to make. And unless you have that experience standing next to a 16-year-old who's facing life in prison, sitting in judgment in that moment for the first time is not going to be a comfortable experience. It's not going to be a comfortable experience for someone who has that experience. Lastly, the third basis is I truly care about people. And all I want is for each of us to have an opportunity to, if you come through the system, not have the system ruin your life. So I work exceptionally hard to make sure that the people who are standing next to me, I do everything I can to provide them what they need to build themselves up so that they can break the cycle, whatever it is, whether that's mental health, whether that's a drug and alcohol issue, whatever it is that brought them to the system. Our job as a system is to build them back up so at some point they can break.
Okay, thank you. And last question, what do you view as one of the top 3 problems in the legal system, and what concrete plan are you going to implement to rectify that problem?
Yeah, so I think mass incarceration is the biggest problem we face. And I think there's a number of issues that cause that, you know, whether that be pretrial detention or post-trial detention based on a probation violation and how we handle probation violations in this county. So in order to address these issues, one, technical violations, we need to handle those differently. I understand detaining someone because they committed a new offense, we can have that conversation. But because someone wasn't compliant, that's where I start to have some difficulty, especially when you consider that we supervise our citizens here in Allegheny County more than anyone else in the state, and Pennsylvania more than anyone else in the country. So we're creating a system that's building people up to fail, which is leading to that the mass incarceration that is destroying communities. You know, it destroys the stability in home. And when the stability at home is destroyed, you're asking people to rebuild from scratch. And these issues become generational. Opportunity Court is the goal. A diversion program that allows people to come in through the system, understanding that poverty and lack of opportunity are primary contributing causes to criminal behavior. We want to include those people into our diversion programs. We want to provide resources to them sooner in the process. Right now, they get these resources the 3rd, 4th, 5th time through the system. And lastly, we want to make sure they get them earlier. And lastly, we want to make sure that when they leave the program, they're free from conviction so they can continue building their lives without having to start over.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it. Please leave your information in the chat, your campaign information in the chat box for everyone.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, we'll have Chuck Porter. Now, there's a couple of Chuck Porters in the waiting room, so I'm just gonna let in the one in the middle and see what happens.
I see Chuck is in, Frank.
Oh, Chuck, are you here?
I'm on now, Frank. Yeah, sorry about that.
It's on you. Welcome. Look to the chat box for your time. Mikey, take it away.
All right, Chuck, good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
Great. 3 questions for you here. Please
Okay.
introduce yourself.
I'm sorry?
Please introduce yourself and tell us what position you are seeking and tell us your bar rating from the ACBA.
Okay, my name is Chuck Porter. I'm seeking a position on the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County, and I am recommended by the Bar Association.
And have you sought the endorsement by the FOP? And if so, does this endorsement impact your ability to be fair and impartial in cases involving lease?
I have sought the FOP endorsement. I have been endorsed by them, and the answer is no, absolutely not. I have been a criminal defense lawyer for 34 years. I was a prosecutor before that. The way I perceive it is I am someone who is respected by the people on the other side of the aisle. So I am someone, everybody who knows me knows I fight very hard for my clients. I do that regularly, but I also have the respect of the other side because that's just how I practice law. So the fact that I'm endorsed by them is really of no moment. I'm endorsed by them much like I essentially respected quite much by the defense bar. And I think I have a great reputation with the defense bar, and all my colleagues who practice in criminal defense know what kind of lawyer I am. So I think the fact that I'm endorsed by them should really have no significance or consequence in my mind.
Okay, thank you. And last question. Will your well-known and close relationship with the current district attorney affect your ability to be fair and impartial in difficult circumstances?
Absolutely not. As I've said before, I am a criminal defense attorney primarily for the last 34 years. What that means is on a regular basis, I am fighting with the district attorney's office, and I am often critical of them in the position they take. The fact that I used to be partners with Steve Zappala many years ago, and the fact that my firm has represented them in civil matters doesn't mean that I can't put that aside, because on a regular basis, even as recently as this past week, I am in criminal cases where I'm fighting with the district attorney's office routinely. I have no problem doing that. One of the ironies, of course, is, with the FOP that you asked about earlier, I think it's pretty well known that there's quite a rift between the FOP and the district attorney's office. So the fact that I am able to get along with both of them, along with the defense bar, I think suggests that I am someone who is viewed by all as a fair person and someone who's going to treat everybody the same in my courtroom if I am so blessed.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Please leave
Sure.
information in the chat box, please. Campaign info.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chuck.
All right, Brian, take care.
No, you also. Next, we will have Beth Tarasi Sinatra. I'm gonna let her back in. Beth, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Make sure you look to the chat box for your time, and I will turn it over to Mikey.
All right, Beth, good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm wonderful. The 3 questions for you here. Please introduce yourself and tell us what position you are seeking, and tell us your bar rating from the ACBA, please.
I'm Beth Tarasi Sinatra. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County. I am in the best lawyers in America, and I'm AV preeminent rated. And at this time, I am not recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association, which is pretty much unbelievable because I'm AV preeminent rated, which is the highest possible rating that an attorney can receive in the profession. And I am recognized as one of the best lawyers in America. So something has to be wrong here.
Okay. Please tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client in a trial. Please include the type of case, proceeding, and what made it memorable.
I represented 13 employees who worked at the Bridgeville glass plant, and they were poisoned by mercury. Generally, this type of case would be strictly workers' compensation, and that's a big problem because when you're poisoned by mercury, your damages are not, they're very difficult. I was able to convince the judge that General Electric committed willful misconduct, and I was able to get that case out of the workers' compensation statute, and I got my 13 clients a lot of money. And this is unheard of, and I don't know how many lawyers have done this or could have done this, because in Pennsylvania it is extremely difficult. And I did that. I knocked it out of the park, and I was so proud of that result. And I was so proud that I was able to get those people fairly compensated.
Okay, thank you. And last question, what do you view as one of the top 3 problems in the legal system? And then what concrete plan are you going to implement to rectify that problem?
One of the biggest problems I see is having judges who are not experienced and have not tried cases and have not really dug in and practiced law, and not face the daily issues that you face when you are in a practice. You know, like someone who works for the government or someone who works for some administrative process. They don't understand what you have to do as a judge. Now, I go before these type of judges, and I really have to work hard to get them to understand the legal issues and to understand what my clients are going through. For instance, I had a judge in a case who I was bringing, it was just a year ago, I was bringing a bad faith claim. And it was a claim that was worth about $1.2 million. And in the bad faith claim, you first try it to the jury, and then afterwards the judge has to make a decision about the bad faith. The judge that I was before in the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County did not know what the premier decision, Wrenkowski, was. He said he said, well, let me study this. Well, we had briefed it, and we had told him what Wrenkowski was about and what his duty was, and he did not know. That was extremely frustrating for me. And that has been frustrating for me during my 30 years of practice. We need judges who have actually tried cases. We need judges who are experienced. We need judges that the public and that the lawyers who they go before recognize them. You don't get in the best lawyers in America by being someone who doesn't go to court every day. That is a recognition by the peers that you practice before. You don't get to be AB preeminent rated by being some run-of-the-mill lawyer. We need lawyers who are experienced, who have the passion, who have been through divorce, have raised kids as a single mother, take care of their 90-year-old parents. This is what we need. We really need this, and I'm really fighting hard and working hard. I will only have 14 years on the bench. We don't need young people who are going to be on that bench for 40, 50, 60 years. It's not right. We need to get term limits. We need to get people who are good, who know what they're doing, who have experienced life.
Okay, thank you so much, Beth. If you could leave your campaign information in the chat, I would appreciate that.
Okay, I'll try to do that. You know, I sent Frank an email because I am on my way. I'm taking my 90-year-old mother out for Mother's Day, and she wanted to go at 5:15 to Benihana. So I'm in my car, and you're not seeing my face because I'm taking my mother, and I am not going to tell her that, no, Mom, you are not going to Benihana for Mother's Day. Not at 90-year-old, not on my watch. Thank you very much, and I'll put my stuff in the chat. Bye-bye.
And please don't tell her it was my fault. I appreciate that.
Hey, Frank, no, I wouldn't. Take care.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good evening, almost. Okay. All right, please introduce yourself and tell us what position you are seeking, and tell us your bar rating from the ACBA, please.
Sure. My name is Bruce Beemer. I am currently a judge on the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. I am running to retain that position, and my bar rating is highly recommended.
Okay. And as a former colleague of former Judge Marc Tranquilli, what steps can the Court of Common Pleas take to protect litigants from judges abusing their powers like former Judge Tranquilli?
Well, we saw one way in the Judge Tranquilli case, which is attorneys that are willing to step up in a situation where a judge was behaving inappropriately and worse. And so the first is making sure that litigants are aware of the Judicial Conduct Board and its role, and when it's appropriate to let that body know that a judge has done something inappropriate or wrong. That includes both for litigants and advocates, and it's just critically important. We saw it in that particular case, an individual who simply was exhibiting a lack of temperament, demeanor, and bias and prejudice that just shouldn't happen with any judge sitting on the bench.
Okay. And last question here. I'm sure you've heard of many candidates speak about criminal justice reform over the past few months. As a current judge, please detail possible reform efforts that sound good, but are actually beyond the authority of a judge for the Court of Common Pleas.
Sure. I actually am sitting in the criminal division, so I would say I'm on what you would call the front lines of looking at and seeing the things that we need to do. There are certain types of reforms. I like to say in the judicial system, we look at both the macro and the micro. The micro is what a court is able to do within the confines of their courtroom and within the confines of the rules to prevent injustices in their courtroom. The macro is oftentimes laws that are on the books that would require a change from the legislature. An example would simply be looking at, there's a real push right now to eliminate, at least with respect to certain types of homicides, life without the possibility of parole. The judges right now have no discretion and could not change that. But that is something that the legislature and the executive branch would have to look at as an option to reform the system in a particular way. So we have the ability to do things like not impose cash bail pretrial. We have the ability to not hold people on probation or parole violation detainers and for nonviolent and other types of offenses. And those are the things that we can focus on.
Okay. Thank you, Judge Beemer. Please leave your campaign information in the chat for everyone.
Sure. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Judge. Next, we will have Albert Ververka. Albert, let me know when you're in.
I'm in.
All right. Please monitor the chat box for your time. I will turn it over to Mikey.
Hi, Albert. Good.
Hi.
Almost evening here. Please introduce yourself and tell us what position you are seeking. Tell us your bar rating from the ACBA, please.
Sure. My name is Albert Ververka. I'm a candidate for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. My bar rating is not recommended at this time.
Okay. Please tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client in trial. Please include the type of case, proceeding, and what made it memorable.
I spent over a week in a homicide trial representing a 76-year-old man who was accused of murdering his daughter's ex-boyfriend, who had come to her house that night with a machete to murder her. And it was a very unfortunate set of circumstances. It was a very long, brutal trial. And at the end of the day, he was acquitted, and sending him home to his family was a moment I'll never forget.
Okay. And last question here. How would you characterize your experience with criminal defendants and criminal defense attorneys while working in the DA's office, and why?
I think I had a nice relationship with everyone I work with. I currently am a criminal defense attorney. I have been so for almost 7 years now. As an assistant district attorney, I woke up every day trying to do the right thing, whether that be dismissing the charges, whether that be putting somebody into a diversionary program, whether it be making a plea offer to reduce the charges, or sometimes taking a case to trial and seeking incarceration. I did a lot of child sex abuse cases as a prosecutor. Those are some of the most horrible cases that one can have. I met a lot of very unfortunate young victims who suffered emotionally, mentally, developmentally, from the abuse that they suffered. But I think overall, I had a wonderful experience as an assistant district attorney. I think it prepared me well to be a criminal defense attorney, to understand what it's like now to sit with defendants and how their lives are dramatically impacted by the decisions made by the prosecutor. And I think it overall developed me into the attorney that I am today.
Great, thank you, Albert. If you could leave your campaign information in the chat for everyone, that would be great.
Yes, sir.
All right. Welcome, Bill. I will turn it over to Mikey, but before I do, please check the chat for your time. You'll get a notification at 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and then time. So I will turn it over to Mikey Hood for the questions. Thank you.
Bill, good evening.
Hello.
Hello. All right, please introduce yourself and tell us what position you are seeking, and tell us your bar rating from the ACBA, please.
Yes, my name is William Bill Cye, C-A-Y-E. I'm running for the Common Pleas Court of Allegheny County. I've been rated by the Allegheny County Bar Association as recommended.
Okay. And you mentioned in your speeches about taking the courts to the streets. Please provide 3 specific examples of how you can implement that as a judge.
First, by carrying yourself as a person of the human race and going into the communities that have been marginalized and disenfranchised. First and foremost, we're human beings and we all need to be treated with respect and dignity. That would be the first example. The second example is my platform for accessibility to justice in community-based courts. We need to be more proactive, more preventative, and more engaged in our communities in a regionalized sense to understand the dynamics of the communities like Lincoln and Leamington, like Manchester and Marshall Shadeland, and like other parts of Allegheny County, where again, many judges have no idea of what the people really want because they don't listen to the people. The third platform that I have in terms of why I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas is to make a difference in the lives of everyday people, to give opportunities and second chances to people that are deserving of it, and to use the judicial code, actually the rules of judges, to implement these changes, not to legislate from the bench, but to follow the law, to use empathy and compassion. And clearly we need to include people. And that takes effort, it takes work, and people have to work together and respect differences. And we have to try, and we have to try, and we have to try, because there is no kicking it down the road. We cannot afford to exclude people, and all people have to have equal justice under our law. So those are the 3 things that I've given specific examples of what I mean by taking our courts from the bench in downtown Pittsburgh and out into the communities. Thank you.
Okay, and last question. Please tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client in trial. Please include the type of case proceeding and what made it memorable.
I've had a lot of memorable experiences on both the good side and the bad side. I felt tremendous emotion and passion for an individual that I exonerated in a homicide case that was charged as a juvenile in the adult system. And we first and foremost used procedural techniques to get the case transferred back to the juvenile court. And the case was being presided over by Judge Kim Clark, who's now our president judge. And I had a private investigator that, like myself, rolled up our sleeves and went out to Clairton and to Duquesne, and we talked to witnesses that were refused or recanted their testimony. And we also double-checked what the police report said. The police did a sloppy investigation. They did not seek all of the evidence that was available. We went and we were lucky through hard work and diligence to get a video that showed that my client was not the one that they alleged to have conducted the shooting. So he was exonerated, the charges were dismissed, but it took a lot of effort. It took a lot of hard work. And I doubt that many lawyers would be persistent in those types of situations going against the government. But that's exactly the type of person that everybody wants on the bench. Somebody that's going to be street smart, book smart, life's experiences, and compassionate and show empathy where appropriate. And that's why I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. If you could leave your campaign contact information in the chat, that would be very helpful.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Happy Mother's Day to everybody.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Bill. All right, do we have Wrenna here? Wrenna, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let's see, check our moderator. Let's see.
Hi.
All right. All right, Wrenna, welcome. Would you please check on the chat for your time? You'll get a notice at 1 minute, 30 seconds, and 10 seconds in time. I will turn it over to Kiki.
Hi, Wrenna. All right, let's get started. Please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you're seeking and tell us what your bar rating is from the ACBA.
Hi, and thank you. Thank you all for this opportunity. And thank you to the Pittsburgh Black Lawyers Alliance. And I am Wrenna Watson. I'm a candidate for judge of the Court of Common Pleas. I have a recommended rating from the Bar Association, which states that you are highly qualified to sit the bench that you are seeking. And I am a 29-year practicing attorney, and I have 26 representing children and family, thousands of children and family from every division of the court, members of the community, and I have 26 years sitting as a judge of the minor judiciary. I've heard over 50,000 cases as a judge of the minor judiciary. I sat as a Pittsburgh City Magistrate, judge of the Pittsburgh Magistrate Court, where I heard 22,000 cases, criminal child sex assault, underage drinking, traffic court, housing court, dog court, set arraignments, did bail, issued warrants. I also have chaired city planning and zoning. In fact, I'm the first Black chair to simultaneously chair both of those boards, did that for 8 years. I'm a Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board hearing officer, former for Western PA and Erie. And I think most importantly, I've sat and continue to sit as a mental health hearing officer. And so I'm here because I'm fair. And you can ask anybody that's been in my courtroom over 26 years, they'll tell you I'm fair. I listen to both sides of the case before I make a decision, and I treat everyone with respect. And these are not new qualities for me. These are things that I've been exhibiting over the course of 26 years and 50,000 cases.
Okay. How does being a Black female better position you to change the inequality in the legal system?
Well, I have been a change agent over the course of my 26 years of adjudicating cases. And change to me is not only all the reforms. I'm in agreement with all the reforms that we had, that a lot of different people talk about. But I think even more importantly, some of those changes and some of that reform does not come from the bench. I certainly would advocate that our legislators make those changes. Some of the things that people haven't talked about, I have some other changes that I know need to be made based on my experience in the cases that I've handled, not only as a judge, but also representing people and defending people. But what I bring to the bench when I say fair is that, and I'll give you an example. When I was a magistrate, I had a case and it was a white guy in his 40s, kind of looked like he was stuck in the 60s. He had a great big bag of marijuana, loosely packed. The charges were the standard charges for that sort of evidence, which is possession and possession with the intent to deliver. I called the case. When the district attorney approached and the defense attorney, they told me they had a deal. The deal was that the DA would withdraw the possession with the intent to deliver, which is the most, carries the heaviest penalty. It's the worst of the two charges. And they would allow the defendant to proceed on the possession only. I signed off on that deal. 2 months later, the exact same case came before me again, and factually, only this time it was a young Black male in his 20s. And I sat and I waited. When I called the case, I waited to hear the deal, the same deal that was given for the exact same case 2 months before. And no one talked about a deal. Normally, you would then let that proceed to court and the DA would call their police witness and give you all the evidence. I didn't allow that to occur. I took control of the case and I told the district attorney, hey, I am going to take control of this case. Your office made a deal on this exact same case 2 months ago. And I didn't talk about it being black or white. I just talked about the facts of the case. And I'm going to make this same deal happen today. I threw out the more difficult charges, the possession with the intent to deliver, and allowed them to proceed on the possession because that's fair. And I think that we all need from the bench to have people that we know are going to be fair. And fair is not only fair, yes, Blacks have been hugely more mistreated and treated more unfairly than any other class or race, which is why we have 60 to 70% of the people incarcerated that are Black. Additionally, but fairness, that same fairness has to be extended to the LGBTQIA community, Muslims, Asians, another white person with the same factual situation. Fairness is for everyone. And that's what I bring to the bench, fairness, and I exhibit respectful treatment of people. Everybody should be treated with respect. And I've been doing those things for 26 years.
We have less than a minute. If you can tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client in trial, include the type of case proceeding and what made it memorable, aside from the one you just told, I guess.
I've represented a lot of elderly, had a lot of guardianship type cases. And because that's hard to think of when you've had thousands of cases. But I had a case where family, and I have a case right now where families are coming together and they're fighting about who's going to take, usually it's a money issue, but who's going to take care of usually their father or mother, some senior person. And I'm doing that right now. I take care of my 98-year-old dad. And we had a 5-hour case in orphans court. And the issue was, were the sisters going to get to take care of him, or was my client doing it? My people had been doing it for years and with no pay or anything else. And so I see that my time's up. I don't want to go over. I don't know that I gave you a great case to talk about, and I apologize for that. It wasn't a lot of time.
Thank you so much, Wrenna.
Thank you so much.
Please be sure to leave us your campaign information in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you all. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Judge Pappas.
I'm back.
Okay, all right. Welcome, Judge. Please look to the chat box for your time reminders. You'll get one in 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and time. I will turn it over to the moderator, Kiki.
Hi, Judge Pappas. Let's get started. Please introduce yourself. Tell us what your position is, or what position you're seeking, and tell us your bar rating from the ACBA.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mik Pappas. I'm a magisterial district judge representing 8 neighborhoods in the east end of the city of Pittsburgh, including East Liberty and the surrounding area. I'm a candidate for the Court of Common Pleas, and my bar rating is not recommended at this time, but I would hope to give that some context if I may.
All right, please explain your overall statistics as to cash bail as a judge.
Sure. Well, let me just say that I think that we need judges right now who are going to help lead our justice system from an era of deep reckoning into an era of reconciliation, truth-telling, and reform. And I've exemplified this throughout my time as a district judge. I was the first candidate or elected official in Allegheny County to take the position that we should end cash bail. And since then, I have been able to do that. I've presided in well over 1,000 bail hearings, and I have eliminated my reliance on cash bail at this time. Out of over 1,000 bail hearings, I've relied on cash bail in less than 1% of cases, I think 11 times total. And nobody has ever been detained on a bail that I set simply because they could not pay.
All right. I'm sure you've heard many candidates speak about criminal justice reform over the past few months as a current judge. Please detail possible reform efforts that sound good, but are actually beyond the authority of a judge for a Court of Common Pleas.
Sure. Well, let me just say that a judge has an obligation to be faithful to the law as it stands. A judge has an obligation to promote confidence in the court, but within the authority of the judge, there's a lot of room for administering the court a certain way, for taking steps that promote confidence in the court, so everybody knows that when they come before the judge, they'll have a fair opportunity to be heard. And so, I've been focusing on reforms that I know will make a difference in our courts whenever I talk about reforming our justice system. So I think that what we have to do overall is show leadership in terms of making a plan to end cash bail. But that's really just part of a larger need that we have in Allegheny County, which is to end mass incarceration in Allegheny County. I think that we can do it, and I think that judges play an important leadership role in that.
Thank you so much. Please leave your campaign information in the chat. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
May I give a quick context to a bar rating, please?
Time check. Do we have time for that? How much time? Please put it
I've been mindful in my responses. I think I have a little bit of time.
No problem. I believe so. We have no warnings. Yes, you may.
Thank you. I think that context is important in these situations. I am born and raised in East Liberty. I grew up in a household with an incarcerated parent. I've lost loved ones to gun violence and addiction. And this is my overall experience. I am 39 years old. I have a 11-year-old, a 4-year-old. I've got a lot of personal lived experience that I bring to the table, and I think that makes me a very effective judge. Another thing that makes me a really effective judge is that I have a broad base of professional experience. When I graduated from Lehigh University back in 2004, I deliberately chose to become a community organizer first. I worked in organizing for 10 years. I worked in the state Senate for 6 years before and during law school. And I knew that I wanted to enter into the law right after undergrad, but I also knew it was important to get a broad base of experience first. So this was a deliberate choice that I made. So while I haven't been a member of the bar for 10 years, which is something that the bar usually looks for as a prerequisite, I do have a broad base of experience that I think only makes me an effective judge and promotes confidence in the people who come before me that they're finally getting a judge who really gets them. So since becoming a magistrate district judge, I've been a leader. I've led in the area of cash bail. I've led in the area of landlord-tenant matters. I've been able to reduce the eviction rate in our district. I've put restorative justice into practice, taking it from the theory into practice. This is what I bring to the table. I've demonstrated leadership in terms of building a more equitable justice system throughout Allegheny County. And I'd like to be able to do that as a member of the Court of Common Pleas as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please remember to leave your campaign information in the chat. Thank you so much for your time.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Housley, let me know when you're in. You can hear me.
I am in.
All right. Thank you. Welcome, Judge. Please be mindful of the time in the box. You'll get a 1 minute, 30 second, 15 second, and a 10 second and a time notification. For that, I will turn it over to Kiki.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Judge Housley.
Good evening.
Let's dig in. Let's please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you're seeking and tell us your bar rating from the ACBA.
My name is Judge Elliot Housley. I am seeking to retain my position on the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas, where I currently serve in the Family Division and the Criminal Division. My bar rating is, I've actually twice been highly recommended. So I'm twice highly recommended.
Thank you. You are a longtime district attorney and head of the public defender's office. Many of your former friends and colleagues are still in leadership roles in both offices. How will you assure the public that those relationships will not affect your ability to be fair and impartial?
I think the truth of the matter is that the criminal defense bar is fairly small, so everyone knows everyone. I've worked in a system for the last 22, 23 years. So you know everyone, you have relationships with everyone. But at the end of the day, people have rights, constitutional rights to make sure, and attorneys have an obligation to make sure that those rights are protected at every stage of the process, and relationships should never interfere with that. You know, it's the Commonwealth's burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime has been committed, and it is the defense attorney's obligation to protect that person's rights at every step. And so there's no way that we can allow relationships to interfere with the law and the application of the law to the facts. So that would not be an issue.
Okay. And I'm sure you've heard many candidates speak about criminal justice reform over the past few months. As a current judge, please detail possible reform efforts that sound good, but are actually beyond the authority of a judge for the Court of Common Pleas.
Okay. Wow, that's a great question. So I've heard a number of candidates discuss possibly bringing in different, social services into the courtroom to assist with the disposition of cases. That is beyond the jurisdiction and the authority of a judge. You know, judges don't have the authority to hire social workers or to put people on staff to help with the disposition of a case. We don't have that in our budget. By law, we are only permitted to hire 3 employees, a tip staff, a law clerk, and a secretary. We don't have the legal authority to hire anyone else. So that's beyond the discretion of a judge. Another issue that is beyond the discretion of a judge are the issues I hear about people saying that they'd like to bring the courts back to the people and back to the community. Again, judges don't have the authority to set up a satellite office or a satellite courtroom in a neighborhood, as convenient as it may be, and as forward thinking as it may be. We do not have the legal authority to set up courtrooms in different parts of the county or in different communities. So those are just 2 issues that I've heard mentioned a number of times that just are not realistic approaches to reforming our courts.
Thank you so much, Judge. If you are finished, I believe you've beat your time, but if you want, please leave your campaign information in the chat.
Okay, that's it. So just 2 questions?
That's it. You have 3 questions, I believe. Yeah.
I thought that was 2. Okay, all right, fair enough.
You had 3 questions.
I'll leave my information. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank
Judge.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you as well.
Judge Tom Caulfield.
I can do both.
All right, thank you much. Welcome. We have a moderator here, but before we get started, please be mindful of your time. To the right or the left of your screen is a time. You'll get a 1 minute, a 30-second, and a 10-second, and then a time. So I will turn it over to the moderator, Kiki.
Thank you.
Hi, Judge Caulfield. Please introduce yourself, tell us what position you are seeking, and tell us your bar rating from the ACBA.
My name is Tom Caulfield. I'm seeking a seat on the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas, and I am highly recommended by the Bar Association.
And please provide 3 examples of how sitting as a magistrate judge has given you a different perspective on the criminal justice system.
Well, I don't know that it's given me a different perspective on the criminal justice system. I worked in the criminal justice system for 19 years as a public defender before taking the bench in 2010. I found that the role of being an advocate is one sort of skill set. But then when you're called upon to no longer advocate for one side or the other and simply evaluate the evidence, there is a process. And as every lawyer who's ever practiced in Allegheny County Criminal Division will tell you, some judges never stop, quite honestly, being prosecutors. And it shows. So I have tried very hard not to be a defense attorney from the bench, because I don't know that that's any more fair. But I try to be fair and impartial for all the cases that come before me. But I do think that the background of criminal defense work for all that time was very beneficial. I think it really I think that skill set sort of jives.
All right, and last question. I'm sure you've heard many candidates speak about criminal justice reform over the past few months. So as a current judge, please detail possible reform efforts that sound good, but are actually beyond the authority of a judge for the Court of Common Pleas.
Well, one of the things that has been troubling are candidates who tell you essentially how they're going to rule on a case, that they won't do this or they won't do that. I think that eliminating cash bail, while I use it very sparingly, and it can be used with very minimal effect, the legislature has to outright ban it. And unless the legislature or the Supreme Court decides to do that, it is going to exist. And there are some judges that are going to use it. It can be corrected and it can be modified by a common pleas court judge. But certainly it can't just be eliminated from the bench. One of the things that I always find sort of interesting is I'm well aware that if I am perceived to be unfair towards the Commonwealth, all I'm going to have is jury trials. You know, the Commonwealth will simply invoke the Commonwealth's right to a jury trial over and over and over and over again. And in the same way that when I was in private practice early in my years as a public defender, and I had the occasion to travel down to Fayette County, and I was informed that every sitting judge was the former district attorney. And so I would be wanting a jury trial on my case, because that's what they do down there, is have jury trials. And the assistant district attorney said that he had 50 in the prior year. You know, I certainly don't want to be so perceived to be so one-sided that I'm forever doing jury trials. I would like to think that I am fair. I would like to think that I am impartial. And I like to think that at the end of the day, I let the case unfold. I let the evidence come in as it's legally admissible, and I make a decision based on that. And the one thing is, and I've said this to a lot of groups, I don't have to like the result. There's a lot of cases, and in fact, they're the most difficult cases when I don't like the result, but I know that legally speaking, it is the correct decision. I took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So yes, the one side or the other, and it applies in civil cases as well as criminal cases. The one party may be much more sympathetic and my heart may go out to them, but if the law says what the law says, it's not my role to legislate from the bench. It's just not. I have to obey. Otherwise, we're no longer a nation of laws. We're simply a nation of rogue judges, each one of them doing whatever they want, however they want. And that's terrible for consistency. It's terrible for justice. And it's terrible for any trust that the people may have in the court system as a place where they can go be treated fairly and receive justice.
Thank you so much for your time. Please be sure to leave your campaign information in the chat. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Judge. Next.
I can hear you. I'm just coming in right now. Thank you.
Gotcha. All right. Well, welcome. Please be mindful of your time in the chat box. I don't know if it's to your left or to your right. You'll get a 1 minute, a 30-second, a 10-second, and a time notification. I will turn it over to the moderator for the questions.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Costa.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you're seeking, and please tell us your bar rating from the ACBA.
Yes, my name is Jessel Costa. I'm seeking one of the 9 seats on the Court of Common Pleas. I've been a public defender. I now work in private practice, and I also have worked as a Deputy Attorney General in their Child Sex Abuse Unit. I'm the election protection attorney for the Democratic Party for about the past 12 years. As for my Bar Association rating, I did not apply for a rating because I believe the process to be unfair, because I do not believe that they give candidates with less than 10 years of experience a fair shake. I have 9+ years of experience, and so I did not apply for a rating knowing that I would get a bad one, and for my trouble, I was given the rating of unqualified.
Okay. One of your talking points is mandatory bail review. Currently, a bail can be reviewed by a common pleas judge within 48 to 72 hours. So how would you, as a common pleas judge, improve that process?
I think it needs to be made mandatory and universal across Allegheny County Criminal Division. Point being, in today's circumstances, your bail review is kind of dependent upon what courtroom you're in, whether they have automatic bail review or whether your attorney will apply for bail review as quickly as possible. In the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas, we have pretrial Friday, every Friday, where new cases are assigned. In a similar way, we should be able to have bail review Monday, Wednesday, Friday, such that every 3 days or every other day, excuse me, we are reviewing all of those individuals who have been incarcerated over the last 48 or 24 to 48 hours and doing it across the county, not on an individual courtroom by courtroom or attorney by attorney basis.
Mm-hmm. All right. And you speak of sentencing reform, or you've spoken on it. What would you specifically do as a judge to reform sentencing?
I would look to utilize restorative justice and restorative justice-based sentencing in the means of rehabilitation over incarceration. We would try to utilize any of the diversionary programs that we have, and we would hope to expand those diversionary court programs because they kind of provide a pathway for participants to come out with the least harsh sentence and with the least amount of criminal record possible. So it sets them up for success in the future as opposed to failure. Anytime that we can utilize rehabilitation community service, restitution, or other means other than a jail cell to determine someone's sentence and let them repay their debt to society, we should be utilizing those across the Court of Common Pleas in Allegheny County.
Thank you so much. I believe you have maybe a little over a minute. If you don't have any further remarks, you can leave your campaign information in the chat. We appreciate your time.
Thank you all so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know there's a lot of other candidates to get through, so I'll leave my information and I'll let you guys go. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Sorry.
All right, welcome. I'm going to, before I turn over to Kiki, our moderator, I want to remind you of the chat. Your time will be placed in the chat to your left or to your right. You'll get a 1 minute, a 30-second, a 10-second, and then a time. So please be mindful of that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kiki.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Good evening. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well, thank you. All right, please introduce yourself. Tell us your position that you're seeking and your bar rating from the ACBA.
Certainly. My name is George Heim. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas, and I received a highly recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association.
All right. And what do you view as one of the top 3 problems in the legal system? And what concept plan are you going to implement to rectify that problem?
For me, the number 1 problem is systemic racism. We have procedures in place which skew the system so that it's impossible for people of color to get a fair chance. A perfect example are representative juries. I've been an attorney for over 22 years, both as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney. I've done over 100 jury trials. And during that time, going into the jury room to choose a jury from a pool of generally around 35 to 40 potential jurors, I've never seen more than 1 or 2 people of color in that whole room. So statistically, what that means is people of color are almost guaranteed not to have their constitutional right to be tried by a jury of their peers. Judges need to work on those underpinnings of the system. Just being fair isn't enough. We need to change the system so that the foundation is fair. The way that we choose potential jurors is from the voter rolls. And as we all know, communities of color are underrepresented there. And we don't know if they're targeting certain geographical areas from within the voter rolls. As a private attorney, I can't access that information. As a judge, I could, and I could walk into that room and say, this jury pool will not stand, bring in another one. You know, you have people with their liberty and even their lives on the line. We have to do better.
Okay, and last question. I'm sure you've heard many candidates speak about criminal justice reform over the past few months. And as a former prosecutor and current defense attorney, please detail possible reform efforts that sound good, but are actually beyond the authority of a judge for the Court of Common Pleas.
Interesting. So one of the big areas which people tend to ignore are mandatory minimum sentences. There are certain types of crimes which carry a sentence by statute that the judge can't get around. You can talk as much as you want, but unless we bring the community and the legislature into dealing with that issue, it will remain. I've seen people who have gotten 3 or 4 driving under the influence cases within a year, and because of that, they end up in the state penitentiary. We need to target people sooner when they hit the system, particularly in the school to prison pipeline, and divert them before that happens, because there are cases where judges' hands are tied.
Okay. If you don't have any final remarks, you're pretty much not even close to your time if you wanted to leave those remarks. If not, then please leave your campaign information in the chat. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I will do so. Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks, George. Judge, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Walker, I can hear you.
Thank you. Welcome. Yes, I can hear you and see you. Judge, thank you, and welcome to the forum. Before we get started and turn over to the moderator, Kiki, I want you to be mindful of the chat box that will show your time. You have a total of 5 minutes to respond to the questions posed to you. You'll get a notification at 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and time. So Kiki, all yours.
Thank you so much. Good evening, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. Please introduce yourself, tell us the position you're seeking, and your bar rating from the ACBA.
I will do so. My name is Daniel John Koniecka Jr. I am currently a magisterial district judge representing the people in Shaler, Etna, Millville, and Reserve. Prior to that, I was a prosecutor for 23 years. I was also a criminal defense attorney for 8 years. I've been serving as a magisterial district judge since 2018. I've been highly recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association.
All right. And to your knowledge, what percentage of your magistrate cases do you hold for court?
Oh, wow. No idea. I try to resolve anything that, based on my 34 years of experience, that I know shouldn't go downtown. I would think it's fairly high, but I really don't know. I apologize for not knowing.
Oh, it's okay. This is your last question. You were a longtime assistant district attorney. Many of your former friends and colleagues are still in leadership roles in that office. So how will you assure the public that those relationships will not affect your ability to be fair and impartial?
Oh, wow. I'm friends with just about everyone. The criminal system here in Allegheny County is so close-knit. I'm just as good as friends with folks on the criminal defense, because don't forget I was a criminal defense attorney for several years. I don't let any of that come into play. I'm still friends off the bench, but once you're in a courtroom, both sides are equal. So, and most people know me. I'm probably tougher on people that think that they can get one over on me. So no, I haven't had any issues my 3 years on the bench or my whole professional career treating one person better than the other.
All right. Well, it looks like you beat your time. So if you don't have any final remarks, you can leave your campaign information in the chat. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, I think that's it, because most people, I think in Allegheny County, have been around for so long, I feel like a dinosaur sometimes. But if you don't know me by now, my reputation, then I don't think you're going to learn in the next 10 days. So thank you so much.
Thank
you.
Next, we will have Tiffany Sizemore.
I'm here. I can hear you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Welcome to the forum. We appreciate your time today. You'll have 5 minutes to respond to the questions. Please look to the chat box for your time cues. You'll get a notification at 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and time. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kiki, our moderator.
Hi, Ms. Sizemore. How you doing?
Hi. I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks. Please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you're seeking and your bar rating from the ACBA.
My name is Tiffany Sizemore. I'm running for Court of Common Pleas here in Allegheny County, and my bar rating is recommended.
All right. And what specific change would you champion in your courtroom to ensure racial equality in the juvenile system?
I would champion the abolition of charging children as adults in Allegheny County in the state. That's something that I'm already working on. For right now, until we can get a legislative change, I think that the easiest way to do that would be to stop allowing the transfer of children to adult court. The law is vast, and the ability for judges to have significant discretion in this area is really, really clear. And so I think that I have the ability to make decisions that look at the adolescent brain development of children and decide that they can stay in juvenile court where they can best receive services.
Okay. And final question, please tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client in trial. And don't forget to include the type of case, the proceeding, and what made it memorable.
In a trial? Okay, so I represented, this was in Washington, D.C. I represented a gentleman who was charged with, discharging a gun in the house. And we had had a long preparation up to trial, and we weren't so sure about the verdict, but I just remember standing next to him as we were waiting for the jury. We had a very short return on the verdict that could have gone either way. And I just remember him holding my hand, and we got our not guilty verdict, and he just looked at me and he was like, "Is this real?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Thank you so much." You know, it was just one of the more moving moments in my life because he was facing a mandatory minimum sentence. And so this was an opportunity for him to have his life back and to really go home to his family and have a second a chance in the community.
It looks like you beat your time. So if you don't have any final remarks, you can leave your campaign information in the chat, and we appreciate your time spending with us.
Thank you. I would just say that, we really have an opportunity for those of you voters who are here today to change things in Allegheny County on May 18th. On May 18th. And I am hopeful that everyone will use it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Rosemary. I'm sorry, Tiffany. Sorry, appreciate it, Tiffany. Next, we have Rosemary. Apologies. Rosemary Crawford, which is coming up, and I will bring her into the room. Rosemary, let me know when you're in and you can hear me.
I'm in and I can hear you.
All right, well, welcome. Before we get started, and I turn it over to our moderator, Kiki, please be mindful of the chat where we will display your time cues. You have 5 minutes to respond to all of the questions. You'll get a notification when you have 1 minute left, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and time. So without further ado, Kiki, all yours.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much, Kiki. How are you doing this evening?
I'm great, learning a lot. So let's get started. Please introduce yourself. Tell us your position, the position that you're seeking, and your bar rating from the ACBA.
My name is Rosemary Crawford. I'm a candidate for Court of Common Pleas, Allegheny County. My rating is highly recommended, the highest possible rating from the Allegheny County Bar Association. And this is the second time I've received a highly recommended rating.
Okay. And what specific 3 things will you do to ensure equality in your courtroom?
I think as a Black woman, it's imperative to have diversity on the bench. As you know, more than anyone, being a lawyer, Black lawyer, that we only have 1 Black woman judge out of 43. There's 3 elected Blacks in total. I say that to say I have cultural competence. I've been trained in cultural competence when I was Director of Legal Resources at the YWCA under the umbrella of the Center Against Racism. Also, I have been labor employment lawyer for years and trained people also when I was employment counsel at the gas company, which is now Duquesne Light. So I just would say that is very important to know. That's one thing. Also, I would like to see better access to justice. I would like to have opportunities for people who might be have transportation issues, a job, childcare issues, to be able to do some hearings by Zoom or conference call for certain minor things that are more like status oriented. Also, I would like to see an extension of diversionary programs. I was a prosecutor in a long life years ago. And one thing in the District of Columbia, we had a lot of good diversion programs where you have no criminal record at the end. And that's what we need now. We need an extension of that. If you're a first-time offender, I would hope that you would not have a criminal record if you do get treatment or complete a program. So those are 3 things I think would be important.
Okay, and your final question, please tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client in a trial other than bankruptcy court. Please include the type of case or the case type, the court, and what factors make that moment memorable.
Absolutely. And just for clarification, what type of, did you say in court in general or jury trial? I couldn't remember.
A moment in court while you're representing a client in a trial.
Yes, I had done a trial when I was with the Department of Justice as a trial attorney. And after I'd won the case, it was a bench trial, not a jury. And the opponent told the judge they had ruled wrong because they didn't believe that I should be victorious as a Black woman. I have other stories, but that is one. I have done jury trials in Allegheny County and also on a federal level. If you want to hear those stories. But I will say that is one memorable moment. I was in shock.
Okay. I believe you've beat your time. So if you don't have any final remarks, you can leave your campaign information in the chat. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Have a good day.
You too.
I am in and I can hear you.
All right, thank you very much. Before we get started, please be mindful of the chat box, which is to your left or right of the screen. You'll have 5 minutes to respond to the questions. You'll get a notification at 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and time. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to the moderator, Kiki.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. We are doing really good in time. So let's get to it. Introduce yourself, please, and then tell us what position you're seeking and your bar rating from the ACBA.
Okay, so I am Sabrina Korbel. I am one of the many candidates for the Court of Common Pleas. I am the legal director at the Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh. I've worked there for nearly 20 years, representing survivors of domestic violence, primarily in the family division. And I have a highly recommended rating from the Bar Association, which is something I'm proud of. It's the highest rating you can receive.
Okay. And you have been outspoken on victims' rights on your website and in your marketing material. So please provide 3 examples of how you can assure defendants in a family or criminal court that you can be fair and impartial in domestic violence cases.
Yeah, that's a fair question. So even though my experience has been representing survivors, I've learned a lot about compassion and a lot about trauma. And so I think judges, first and foremost, need to be committed to being public servants and sending their messages to folks who are involved in the court system directly from them. So, everyone coming into the court system should have the right to have their voice heard. And in the family division, a lot of folks who are appearing there do not have representation. It's expensive to have an attorney. It's expensive to be in the court system. And so a lot of my work has been working directly with, to use your word, defendants who are unrepresented. And I've negotiated resolutions. I've listened to their voices. I've been thanked by opposing parties because I think it's about kindness and dignity and respect. And that's what should come first and foremost as a judge. I also think that it's important to just understand that it's applying the law, and applying the law needs to be fair, and it needs to be done with kindness, and it needs to be done with thoughtfulness. And that doesn't matter whether you're a victim of domestic violence or anyone else. When you're coming in front of a judge, that's how the law should be applied. And I believe wholeheartedly in accessibility. We have an accessibility issue in our court system. And again, that doesn't matter whether you're a victim or not. We need to expand ways for everyone to access our court. We need to eliminate all kinds of barriers. And that is one of the things I've learned from representing survivors. We need to eliminate barriers such as transportation, childcare, potential loss of work, potential loss of housing in order to engage in your own court case. Our court needs to be resourceful. We need to be creative about how we connect people to their cases in the place where they are at the moment that they are. And those are just things that should apply holistically across the board.
Okay, thank you. And here's your last question. Please tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client in a trial other than family court. And please include a case type, the court, and what factors made that moment memorable.
You said other than family division?
Other than family division, other than family court.
Yeah, so I've had the opportunity to do some adoption cases. And as a judge, I would imagine there's some of the best cases that you get to work on. But as an attorney, it was a long road of bringing a teenager together with the family officially that he had called family for so many years. And that teenager, after that adoption case was over, it was a young teenage boy, and he broke down and started crying because this put on paper what he had felt in his heart for so long. And the judge in that case gave that family the time that they deserved and the attention that they deserved. And for everyone in that courtroom, there was nothing better than that feeling. And I know a lot of experiences in court are not like that. I totally understand that people have legit concerns about how court treats them in so many different departments. But in adoption cases, it was a really memorable moment because the court impacted that family by putting in concrete terms what they had felt and experienced for such a long period of time. And that was an honor for me.
All right, I don't see any time warning. So if you don't have any final remarks, we appreciate your time, and please be sure to leave your campaign information in the chat.
No, I appreciate your time. There's so many of us, and when you let lawyers talk, we go on. So I'm not going to go on, but I do appreciate everybody here in the Pittsburgh Black Lawyers Alliance and everyone today for their time.
Thank you.
Thanks, really appreciate it.
Thanks. Take care.
No problem. You also. Next, we have Marc Daffner. Let me see if he is in the waiting room. I believe I got a text that he is not in the waiting room. So this wraps up our 5 o'clock hour. Kiki, I appreciate it. We appreciate your insight and you hopping on to step in as a moderator. You did excellent. We'll definitely be inviting you for future forums. So
Okay.
we're going to switch out moderators, take a 3-minute break, and we're going to come back with Ryan, who's going to moderate the 6 o'clock hour.
Thank you.
Going back in actually 2 minutes. Thanks.
All right, bye.
Bye. Ryan, are you there?
Yeah. Hi, Frank. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. Thank you for having me on here.
No problem. I appreciate you stepping in. So
Absolutely.
we're going to start with Jessica. Make sure she's in the room. We got about a couple seconds here.
Okay.
In the room. You have the documents and everything?
Yep.
All right,
Got
cool.
it right next to me.
All right, sounds good. Jessica Lynch. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. Let her in, and I'll turn it over to you. Jessica, let me know when you're in and you can hear me.
I am in and I can hear you.
All right, thank you much. Welcome. We appreciate your time. We're going to get started, but I just want to, before we get started, I turn over to Ryan. I want to let you know about the time. You'll have 5 minutes to respond to the questions. You'll get a notification warning at 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and time. So without further ado, Ryan, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Hi, Jessica. We'll kick things off. Please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you're running for and your bar rating from the ACBA.
Wonderful. So my name is Jessica Lynch and I am running for Magisterial District Judge 05204, which covers the areas of Aspinwall, Blawnox, Fox Chapel, Indiana Township, O'Hara Township, and Sharpsburg. And magisterial district judges are not rated by the Allegheny County Bar Association or any bar association. Magisterial district judges do not need to be lawyers. It's a quirk of Pennsylvania law. I am, in fact, though, a lawyer.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that clarification. I'm sure most of our listeners didn't realize that, but thank you. What specific 3 things will you do to ensure equality in your courtroom?
I will ensure equality by continuing to be aware and educate myself of the issues that are out there. I think a lot of issues, whether it's implicit bias or simply just ignorance, create a lot of problems for our community. And so I will ensure to make sure I stay educated and aware of what the issues are and how different things may affect people. The second thing is I want to foster accountability with the community in terms of making sure people are aware of their rights and their responsibilities. So I want to have interaction in terms of some locations call it a citizens academy or residents academy, where we can have interaction so that, again, more awareness of the community issues at large. And I also want to ensure that I employ the tools available through the landlord-tenant programs to, again, there's quite a lot of inequity in terms of evictions that impact people. And by using the tools that we have available through landlord-tenant and housing court, ensure that we have equality there as well.
Okay, great. Since you are a lawyer, can you please tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client in a trial that kind of stuck out to you? And tell us the case type, the court, and what factors made it memorable.
Okay.
I know we're putting you on the spot there.
No, that's okay. You have to be able to be on the spot, so that's okay. I think I have 2 examples. One where I was an attorney in federal court, and we had a series of cases. They were discrimination cases, and I was the junior attorney handling the matter. And the senior attorney took a witness and breezed through all of the questioning, handled the objections. The judge didn't blink an eye. And then I had a next witness, which was very similar and the same line of questioning. And I encountered objections from the opposing counsel. And the judge, instead of how he treated the senior partner, asked me the basis for my objections and really tested my ability to be in command of the information. But more importantly, what it seemed like to me was it seemed like blatant discrimination, that the male the male partner was able to just go through his examination, and here I am, a young female attorney, and I was grilled and not afforded the same treatment. So that stands out, and it goes to really your first question of equality, and again, being aware of those issues. Another time I made sure of, and a memorable time, was when I represented an individual who had some mental impairments, and it was in a custody matter. And what really stands out through that whole process was his commitment to his child, and how he inspired me to go beyond, at that point in time, what I was comfortable doing in the family law arena, to continue to represent him and help him maintain his relationship with his child.
Great. Thank you very much. How are we on time?
We have no time warning, so you have at least a minute left.
Okay, if you'd like to say something, Jessica, you're more than welcome to. Other than that, we have no more questions.
Wonderful. Well, I do appreciate the opportunity to participate in this event. It's wonderful. There's certainly, as I've been out in the community, our residents are really overwhelmed with the number of candidates at all levels of the court. So they appreciate learning more about us. And I thank you for that. I've been an attorney here in Allegheny County for 29 years. I've practiced at all levels of the local, state, and federal courts. And I'm a conflict resolution specialist who's looking forward to the opportunity to serve my community now in the role of magisterial district judge. So thank you for having us. Thank you for listening to me. I greatly appreciate it. And please vote on May 18th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please leave your information in the chat about how people can contact your campaign.
Very good. Happy to do that. Thank you again. Good night.
Good night. There we go. Yes, I appreciate it. I apologize. I understand you did not get notice, and I take responsibility for that, but I appreciate you taking time out.
That's okay. Teron was able to catch up with me.
No,
he can always find me, so.
No problem. Well, you have 5 minutes to answer the questions posed by the moderator, Ryan. To your left or to your right in the chat box, there'll be a 1 minute, a 30-second, a 10-second, and a time notification. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Hey, Mark.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll kick things off with just introduce yourself. Tell us what position you're running for and your bar rating from the ACBA.
I am Marc Daffner. I'm a candidate for judge of the Court of Common Pleas, and I am recommended by the ACBA.
Okay, great. You mentioned that you're the get things done candidate. What are 3 specific things that you can get done as a judge?
Well, get things done is, and I don't know that I said I'm the get things done candidate, but I am a guy that can get things done, quite simply because, and I've said this in other meetings and other forums, that, you need to have 2 things. Everybody wants change in the system, a positive change. And you can't only just have the desire for that to happen. You also have to have the ability, which involves the experience and the respect of the existing powers that be of the system, if you really want to get that done. I mean, a hot topic now is really bail reform. And I would agree that that is a hot topic, but hand in hand with that is involves detainers, because many more people are incarcerated because of detainers, which seem to never get reviewed by the court. That is a much more dreadful problem than simply people that can't pay bond, because with a detainer, you really don't have that avenue unless the judge will hear it. So one of the things that I would, quote unquote, get done is an expedited review of these detainers. When you're picked up on a probation violation, you're given what's called a Gagnon 1 hearing. That's sort of a probable cause hearing. That's usually not in front of a judge. I would want to hear that case after that Gag 1 hearing as quickly as possible, to see whether this person really needs to be detained in the county jail, or whether there is some alternative, or if there's a way to resolve that violation in its entirety. So that would be one element. Another thing are these diversionary courts. I am greatly in favor of diversionary courts. We use them quite a bit in my practice. One of the problems is that you have to plead into those courts, meaning you end up with a criminal record when you're done, and you have theoretically at least addressed your problems, you're out of trouble, the case is done, but you end up with a record. And I think we need to work towards having these more akin to the ARD program, where the case is simply continued while you are not on probation, but it's rather a bond condition that you continue to work through the program, so that folks can get out of these these situations without being saddled with a criminal record that's going to stick with them for functionally the rest of their lives. So, those are just some examples off the cuff. And again, as Frank said, I didn't get the email, so I'm running around here today and completely doing this off the cuff. So those are the types of things I would like to get done in the courts.
Okay. So criminal justice reform is the big topic now. As a long-term criminal defense attorney, please detail possible reform efforts that sound good, but are actually beyond the authority of a judge in the Court of Common Pleas.
Well, a lot of the things that we talk about, and a lot of the things I've actually been asked questions about this, and I have fired back with, that's a legislative issue, not a judicial issue. For example, I'll give you one example: is mandatory sentences. I was asked in a Zoom meeting early on in the campaign by a legislator, what are you going to do about mandatory sentences? And I said, I'm going to apply them. And this person was horrified. How can you say that? You've always fought against these things, and and so on and so forth. I said, listen, I do not like mandatory sentences. I feel that anything that removes discretion of the judge is not necessarily the best thing in the world. But as a judge, I have to follow them. And it was just beyond this individual to recognize the fact that if I weren't to follow that, the government would appeal, and it just gets remanded to apply these mandatory sentences. So a lot of people want to lay things off on the courts. There's really nothing we can do about that. And what is a judge that doesn't follow the law? You have to follow the law as a jurist. You just do. And it's mandatory sentences. It is sentencing guidelines, for example, in criminal courts. We have no control over that. Even though everybody in the world thinks that we do, we have no control. Those are legislative issues, and those need to be taken up in Harrisburg.
Okay, great. You have 30 seconds. If you have anything else, feel free.
Okay, I think the only thing I can say is, this is such an important election because we really are changing 25% of our court. And, I think everybody needs to focus on who has actually done this job and has this experience, years of experience, something beyond just ideas. It may be a good idea, but if you don't have experience, you cannot possibly hope to succeed at getting these things accomplished. So I would urge everybody just to be careful, check out the backgrounds of all of the candidates before you vote. And thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thanks,
Okay,
Mark.
thanks.
Appreciate it. If you're able to, leave your information in chat. I know you're out driving, but if you're able to, please leave your information in the chat so people can contact your campaign.
Okay, will do.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Please let me know when you are in and you can hear me.
Hi there, I'm in and I can hear you.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome, we appreciate your time here. Before I turn it over to the moderator, be mindful of the chat to your left or right. You'll give 5 minutes to respond to all the questions that are posed to you. You'll get a warning at 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and time. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to the moderator, Ryan, for the questions.
Thank you.
Welcome, Alyssa. Please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you're running for and your bar rating from the ACBA.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name's Alyssa Cowan, and I'm running for Judge of the Court of Common Pleas, and I have been highly recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association.
Okay, great. What are 3 specific things that you will do to ensure equality in the courtroom?
Thank you. Equality in the courtroom is critically important to ensuring that everybody in the courtroom has access to a fair hearing. So the first thing that I would ensure is that everybody who is requesting representation, has the opportunity to obtain an attorney, provide attorney resources for anybody who might be struggling financially with obtaining an attorney, and ensuring that they are represented right out of the gate and giving them time to obtain the representation that they need. In addition, I will be sure to ensure a courtroom that allows everybody to fully present their case. Sometimes judges will rush through their hearings, rush through the court procedures, and I will be sure to make sure that I am dedicating that time, going through the due diligence to make sure everybody does have an opportunity to present their full case so that they can feel satisfied with the outcome, even if they aren't happy with it. But at least they can walk out of there knowing that they were heard, knowing that they were given an opportunity, and that they can walk away from the court system saying, okay, well, at least I got to fully participate in that.
Okay, great. And our last question, please tell us a memorable moment in court when you were representing a client at trial, and include the case type, the court, and what factors made it a memorable moment.
Sure. Well, I think, as a trial attorney, I've had a lot of trials over the years. My practice has been focused on child welfare law, which is abuse, neglect, dependency cases, and delinquency cases for our crossover youth. And as an attorney who has represented children, youth, and family agencies, both in DC as well as here locally in Allegheny County in my current position, I think, each and every one of my cases is memorable. I have frequent trials every week, 3 or 4 every single week. And I think what stands out for me the most is when we have expert witnesses on the stand who can really compassionately present their testimony in a way that allows the courtroom to understand really the core issues of what's going on in a case. And they can provide the insight that other witnesses can't necessarily, and that they're able to provide more of their opinions and pull different pieces of the case together. And I think that a lot of times when we're hearing from our expert witnesses, especially in our child abuse cases, it's often those moments when all the parties, even though we're representing different entities, different people in the case, oftentimes we do have those moments of clarity when we can all come together and realize, okay, there are some really serious issues that we need to address in this case. Let's figure out how we can get past this adversarial part. We all acknowledge now that there was some, problem that clearly is existing in this family's life. And we are now hearing that not only from the fact witnesses, but from the expert witnesses. And let's figure out how we can move forward now. When we have that moment of everything kind of gelling in the courtroom and we all have that aha moment of this is not just that this is something really significant, that this is not just a case for the sake of it being a case, and realizing that we all have work to do with our clients and we all have obligations to get that family whole again. And knowing that when we're walking out of that trial, we all have a to-do list and to make sure that we're working on that together so that the next time we come into court for a review of that case, we are actually making progress and making that family whole again and solving the problems that brought them into the courtroom. So those are the moments that, even though they can also often be the most painful moments in a trial, when we're all kind of like, in terms of some of the testimony that we're listening to, they're also the moments of real clarity that pull us together and we know what steps we need to take going forward.
Okay, great. You came in right on time, Alyssa. Perfect timing. Thank you very much, and feel free to put your info in the chat.
Terrific. Thank you so much for this evening. Have a good rest of your weekend.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you. Next up, we'll have Bryan Malcolm.
I'm in and I can hear you, Frank.
All right, I appreciate it. So thanks for your time today. Before we get started, I turn you over to the moderator. Please look to your left or right to the chat box. You'll have 5 minutes to respond to all questions. You'll get a notification warning at 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and time. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you.
Hey, Bryan.
Hey, Ryan.
Please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you're running for and your bar rating from the ACBA.
My name is Bryan Malcolm. I'm running for one of the seats out of 9 for Court of Common Pleas in Allegheny County. and I am recommended by the Judiciary Committee of Allegheny County Bar Association.
Okay, great. What specific 3 things will you do to ensure equality in your courtroom?
Well, when I first started running in 2019, as you know, I did a deep dive into the issues involving implicit and explicit bias. And I went through the law journals and the studies. And what I learned was the first thing you have to do as somebody who's presiding over a case is be aware that everybody has these implicit biases. Implicit biases are things that we carry around with us. We make distinctions between colors, shapes, sounds, smells, all these types of things. That's what human beings do. You have to be aware of that as you preside over a case. So I made myself well aware of that. The next thing that you have to do to deal with the issue of bias is make certain that the folks that surround you in the courtroom look like the folks that you're serving in the community. You can't have a courtroom that's full of one collection of folks that has no reflection of the real community. So you'd have to reach out to the community and make certain that you're hiring from the communities that you're serving. And that includes underserved communities and minority communities for sure. The other thing that I would do is take care of the issue of the jury pool. Right now, jury pools are not reflective of the folks that are sitting in the courtroom. We make certain that jury pools are reflective of the folks that are sitting in the courtroom in the judicial process.
Okay, great. You mentioned criminal justice reform in some of your campaign speeches and materials. Other than bail reform, what top 3 issues do you identify as needing reform in the criminal justice system? And how will you as a judge address them?
Top 3. So the first thing you have to take care of is folks that are mentally ill, people who have drug or alcohol addictions. They need to be diverted into programs with social services. They're in the criminal justice system through no fault of their own. Likewise, folks that are homeless. These folks don't belong in the criminal justice system at all. So that would be the first thing that I would talk about. The second thing that I would say is that we need a place where we can use restorative justice for first-time offenders that are nonviolent. We need to have them sit with the community leaders, the folks that they committed the crime against. They need to start to take amends and make amends for the actions, their criminal actions, and to understand what they've done. And by doing that, we can hopefully prevent this recidivism or repeat offending. They can also do things like restitution, community service instead of jail time. Those types of programs would be extremely valuable in our system, especially for underserved communities. I think the other thing we need to do is end the school to prison pipeline. And that's the problem where we have folks in our schools, youths, who are referred to criminal justice for their actions in school. That doesn't help anybody. It's especially disparately impacts on folks in the Black communities where Black girls are disparately referred to this public school to prison pipeline. We need to stop that for sure.
Okay, great. I believe we have a little bit of time left. If you have anything else that you'd like to convey to the listeners, please feel free.
Thanks. I'd like to let everybody know that when I started running, I received endorsements from all of the great progressive elected officials, including Bethany Hallam, Nita Pritzio, Olivia Bennett. All of these folks heard my heart and understood the passion that I had when I suggested that I wanted to run and make a difference in the system. And my community service as a Franklin Park councilman and the other 10 years that I spent in my pro bono work and also and the Allegheny Housing Court, where I was also donating my time to folks that had no income to try to help them and make sure that they didn't get evicted. So all those things I'd like people to keep in mind. It's a natural progression for me because of my community service to step forward and to lead as a judge in the Court of Common Pleas.
Okay, thank you very much, Bryan.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bryan. We appreciate it.
Thanks for your opportunity. Appreciate it.
I'm in. I can hear you.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Welcome. We appreciate your time today. in this late hour on a Saturday afternoon. Please be mindful of the time. You'll have 5 minutes to respond to the questions from our moderator, Ryan. To the right or to your left in the chat box, you'll have a 1 minute, 30 second, 10 second, and a time warning in the chat box. All right, so without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you.
Hey, Jason.
How are you, Ryan?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
So please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you're running for, and also your rating from the ACBA.
My name is Jason Cerveau, and I'm running for judge in the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County. I have been rated, well, not recommended at this time by the Allegheny County Bar Association, but that rating was actually from the 2017 rating. Due to administrative error on my fault, I was not able to have my rating done for 2021 prior to the primary.
Okay. The next question is, what 3 specific things will you do to ensure equality in your courtroom?
First, let me back up and tell you, equality in my courtroom will come via employment, because I think that first is where, as a judge, you can make strides in your own courtroom, because helping people become employed in the legal field through the things that you can control, that would be my first aspect. The second aspect of equality would just to ensure that me personally, that I view each individual party individually. Try to avoid all preconceptions. You know, the concept of implicit bias, it can only be addressed if you're aware of it, and I try to pride myself to be aware of it. That's the second thing. The third thing that I feel is you have to be inclusive. And in my courtroom, again, whether it's picking juries, respect for the parties, I will try to be as inclusive as I can in my courtroom.
Okay, great. And the final question, please tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client in trial, and kind of give us some background of the case type, the court, and what factors made it memorable for you.
Well, I guess the most recent, let me back up and tell you, I do civil litigation, and the overwhelming majority of my cases, I represent the railroad and federal employment law cases. So that's where I get the bulk of my trial experience from, pleadings through post-trial motions. But for me personally, I think the most rewarding aspect I ever had was back in 2014, and it was at it was actually an administrative hearing. It was a 3-panel administrative hearing for a TSA employee who I was representing him in a case where because he was a superior, he was not represented by the union attorney, so I had to step in and represent him. And on 3 separate occasions, he had been fired. And each time, because of, the first 2 times were due to administrative proceedings, I was able to have him reinstated in his job. The third one, we were able to have a full-blown hearing, and I was able to get him fully reinstated with back pay. And that was probably the most rewarding aspect of my career up to date, because like I said, although I do have a lot of experience in the litigation aspect, again, that's representing the railroad, and that's for a person, I grew up in a union family. My mom was a teacher, my dad was a teamster. That's my job, and I do it well, but it's taxing. It's not as rewarding as some of the other aspects that I've had.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Jason. I do believe we have a little bit of time left. So if you have anything else that you would like to add, please feel free.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate that, Ryan. I just want to say, as I indicated earlier, I do come from a union family. My mom was a Pittsburgh public school teacher. My dad was a teamster. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, went to Oliver High School. And if you go to my website or anything, I'm a big proponent of education, because I use my education to advance my career, and I try to instill that in kids. I'm a WPI football official. I'm a volunteer football coach, so I try to ensure that children know that education is the key to advancement.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Jason, for joining us. And you can put your information in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks.
Next up, I got notification that Chelsea Wagner and Elon Zor had some conflicts and weren't able to get out, so they won't be able to make it. If they are able to make it later on, we'll bring them in. So next we'll move to Matt Rogers. Randy, you can hear me.
I can, thank you.
All right, thank you much. Before we get started, I'll turn you over to Ryan. I want to welcome you here. We appreciate your time on this Saturday evening. Please be mindful of your time in the chat. You'll have a total of 5 minutes to respond to the questions. You'll get a notification at 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and time. If there's some time at the end, feel free to add any comments and wrap up. And in the end, please remember to leave your information in the chat so people can contact your campaign. Ryan, take it away.
Hey, Matt, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, I appreciate it. This is the second time I've heard your voice today, so.
Please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you're seeking and your rating from the ACBA.
My name is Matt Rogers. I'm running for a seat on the Court of Common Pleas, and I was recommended by the Bar Association.
Okay, great. What specific 3 things will you do to ensure equality in your courtroom?
Well, the first thing is sort of addressing the implicit bias problem, and kind of knowing that it is a large issue in this election and on the bench. I've done quite a bit of sort of like research and reading academic articles about sort of how to actually, personally remove that. And I mean, it starts with one, admitting that it exists, right? Second, recognizing when it's happening, whether you're sitting on the bench or whatever, and you have some sort of positive bias towards somebody for one reason or another, or a negative one. Essentially taking that mental inventory, recognize that it's happening, and then, being able to put those feelings aside and rule in an equitable way. So that's really the first thing. The second, it probably sounds simple, but in practice, I don't really think it is. It's just listening, right? Not hearing argument from either side, but really listening and understanding, who is this person? Why are they here? What's the background? Why are they, in the court system currently? And I think once you take that kind of stock and commit to learning about those that are in front of you, I think more equitable results end up occurring. Finally, this is maybe more of a practical piece, but from my perspective, should I win, and based on my background, I'm going to the family division, right? So there is an issue with equality of access. You're not guaranteed an attorney for any reason, so you have a lot of pro se litigants that either are up against lawyers or are just against other pro se litigants. And there's really some improvement that could be made in terms of the documents and things like that that are available to them, so they can sort of more professionally navigate the court even without an attorney.
Okay, great. And the last question, please tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client in trial, and give us some background of why that was memorable. Maybe the court, maybe give us some background why it was memorable for you.
So that one's actually really easy. It wasn't a full trial, but it was I participated in the civil and family law clinic at Duquesne when I was in law school. And, we were going to motions court for, support modifications or custody issues. And, my very first time in court, I was in front of Judge Mulligan, and she held me for last. I was the last one, and which was strange because they usually like to get the students kind of in and out. So I present whatever motion is. I think it was like a motion for there to modify custody. It's something like that. And so I make my argument. She signs the order, and as she's signing the order, the sheriff kind of comes and stands next to me. I get my order, and then he handcuffs my client. So my first court appearance, I managed to go into family court and have somebody taken away in handcuffs. So that was that was a pretty memorable first experience. He had a bench warrant for something, and they were looking all the litigants up just to check. So yeah, very first time arguing in front of a judge about something totally unrelated to anything criminal, and he's taken away in handcuffs.
Okay, that's not something you hear all the time. But we do have a minute left. If you have anything else that you'd like to say, you do have a minute to go.
Sure. I just think I'll just share sort of the reason that I'm running here, and it really is related to my practice area and family law. This room is probably much more aware than most, but of how the sort of judicial assignment process goes, and even though this is a bit of an outlier year, most judges that are newly elected are sent to the family division, and very few of them stay very long. There aren't a ton of family law attorneys that run. So, my entire purpose is to hopefully get elected, go to the family division, and stay there long term.
Okay.
That is my lane, and I will just thank you guys for having me. And again, thanks for putting this on.
Thank you for participating. You could put your information in the chat.
Will do. Thank you.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thanks for joining us on the Saturday evening. Really appreciate your time. We got a couple questions for you. You'll have 5 minutes to respond to all of the questions. Please be mindful of the time, which we'll put in the chat. You'll get a warning at 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and then time. In the end, if there's some time left over, feel free to add any additional comments outside of the questions you were asked. So without further ado, Ryan, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, Pauline, how are you?
Good, thanks, Ryan.
Please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you're seeking and your bar rating from the ACBA.
So my name is Pauline Calabrese. I'm running for judge of Court of Common Pleas. It is Calabrese for Common Pleas, and that rhymes. So I hope you remember that. I'm also the mayor of Penn Hills. So I went for my bar rating, and I was part of the process is they tell you ahead of time. I was very, very highly recommended by Judge Kim Eaton, who is the administrative judge. I was recommended by Judge Bubash, who I practice in front of, Judge David Spurgeon, Judge Deborah Kunzelman. They asked for 5 trials that you have done, and obviously I only chose trials that I won, and they interview your opponents. And so they spoke very highly of me. However, having said that, I was rated not recommended at this time. So I would like to point out that in my opinion, this is not a rating, this is an endorsement. It was not my first time there. The first time I went there, I asked the president of the Judiciary Committee, what do you need to do? And frankly, the answer was, quote, you need to drink with the members of the committee. So my rating was not recommended at this time, but I would like to point out that I was very, very honored to have my opposing counsel and at not 1, not 2, but 4 judges who spoke very highly of me.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that insight and clarification. The next question, what specific 3 things will you do to ensure equality in your courtroom?
So first of all, I think that we need to look at who's in that room, right? You need to look at who the court personnel is. I think we need to have people of various backgrounds, genders, races, and so we need to have all the way from the top down. So the first thing is look at the personnel. And I think that means from judges to secretaries to tip staff to everybody. The second thing is I think we need to look at the economics of it. Right now, if you don't have the money, for example, to pay for a custody complaint, your children don't get to see you. I think that's not equity. So if you have money, you get in the courtroom. If you don't have money, you don't get in the courtroom. The biggest thing that I will do to ensure equity in my courtroom if I'm elected is I'm going to bring my experience in there. And by that, I mean, when you look at candidates that are running, I'm the only candidate from Penn Hills, which is the largest municipality outside the city of Pittsburgh. Many of the candidates are from the other side of town. We have a lot of candidates from, Mount Lebanon, Upper St. Clair, and so forth. I grew up in the city of Pittsburgh. I grew up in Bloomfield, which is on one end of the Bloomfield Bridge. And when I speak in the Hill, I say, look, I'm on when I was growing up, my mom was praying for the same things that your mom was praying for on the other end of the Bloomfield Bridge. So I think that it's only human nature to bring your background. Right now, as I say, I am the mayor of Penn Hills, which is the largest municipality outside the city of Pittsburgh. And my deputy mayor is Kathy Sapp, and some folks that I work with on the school board. You know, obviously I'm white, and these, I was going to say girls, but now they're women. We all went to the same high school together. So I think we shared the same background, and I think that's important to bring that to the courtroom.
Okay. And the final question is, please tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client at trial, and give us some background as to why that was a memorable time.
You know, truth is stranger than fiction. And I literally just came from, I'll call it an adoption party, but it felt like a birthday party. So we're in the middle of an opioid crisis here in Pittsburgh and across the country. When the pandemic hit and we all went on lockdown, so to speak, I kind of thought, oh, well, there's not going to be much work to do. It was actually just the opposite. You know, what was happening was grandparents are raising their grandchildren because of the addiction problem right now. And I had a case where one of the grandparents called me and said that their daughter was coming to pick up the grandbaby. She said, my daughter just called and said, Donald Trump just said, I'm giving everybody a stimulus check. And her daughter said, I'm coming in to pick up the check. I'm going to go to California. I can stay at a trap house. And I said, what did you say? And she said, a trap house. I had never heard the phrase before. I thought she said crack house. And it's essentially, you know, a drug house. And so we did an emergency petition for custody. And we went into court, and miraculously we got custody. And I say miraculously because there are all sorts of technical issues as to why that probably couldn't have happened, but it did happen. And I'm seeing that all the time. And the grandfather, he was a college football player, just a massive mountain of a man, totally strong, and as I say, a mountain. And when the judge ruled in our favor, he just melted, broke down and cried. And those are the things people say, how can you do this sort of work? And I say, because it's those sorts of things where we're protecting children. I see something, but I'm not sure what that means. Is that 1 minute?
Nope, that's time. But
Okay.
Thank you for that wonderful story from court. You could put in the information in the chat where people could find more information about your campaign ad. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Good evening, everyone.
Thanks, Pauline. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, I can hear you.
All right, good to see you. Thank you for spending time with us on a Saturday evening. We have a couple questions for you. You will hear from Ryan, our moderator, who will ask the questions. But prior to that, please be mindful of your time in the chat. You should get a 1 minute, a 30-second, a 10-second, and a time warning in the chat. And if you have time left over after the questions, feel free to add any information that wasn't asked of you by the moderator. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you.
Hey, Amanda, how are you?
I'm doing well, Ryan. How are you?
Pretty good. As if people don't know you already, but please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you're seeking and your bar rating from the ACBA.
Sure. Well, good evening, everyone. I am Amanda Green-Hawkins, and I am running for Pennsylvania's Commonwealth Court. My bar rating from the Allegheny County Bar Association is recommended, and my rating from the Pennsylvania Bar Association is recommended as well.
Okay, great. What unique perspective will you bring to Commonwealth Court?
Well, the Commonwealth Court is our court that handles appeals from our administrative agencies here in Pennsylvania. And diversity of race, age, gender, and all those other characteristics are certainly important for that court, for our appellate court. We only have one person of color in our entire appellate system of 31 judges. However, there is no one on the Commonwealth Court or another candidate with a strong background in labor. And the Commonwealth Court handles makes so many decisions about labor and about workers. And I have been a union lawyer for going on 20 years, so I can certainly bring
an extensive background in administrative law as well as in labor law, specifically to the Commonwealth Court.
Okay, and that is sorely needed. And our last question, please tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client in trial, and tell us why that was so memorable.
Well, the bulk of my work has been appellate work, and it's been appearing before administrative agencies as well. But I would say that the most memorable, there's so many when you're advocating for people's dignity and respect and for their due process and other rights, and you come out victorious. And one case in particular that I have to point out where I was charged with making the argument, formulating the argument to be used to prevent an employer from closing up their facility and moving to Mexico to make good on a promise or a threat that it made to its employees that if they decided to organize a union, that the employer would close up and they would lose their jobs. And the employer was treating these women unfairly in the workplace. They didn't speak any English. These women only spoke Spanish. There were about 100 of them in his workplace. And they were working under grueling conditions, really, really hot conditions with no access to clean water, no access to air. The air quality in the facility was poor. They were not being paid their fair wages. They were not even being paid minimum wage. And it was just really unhealthy and unsafe. And I remember speaking with these women through a translator, and they were crying and in tears about their conditions and about the threats that the employer made. But through a lot of research, I was able to find and develop the argument to make so that the employer could not, so we could get the order from the court so that the employer could not move to Mexico and be forced to sit down and treat these women with dignity and respect. And I learned about the result of the case, about the decision on NPR, and it appeared in the New York Times.
Oh, wow.
It's very memorable.
That is very memorable. Now, there is some time left, so the floor is yours.
Sure. Well, I thank the PBLA for having this forum. I am a proud member of the PBLA. I've been quite busy, but I hope to return real soon. But it's important that we have people on our courts who can bring diversity of background, diversity of experience, diversity of race, age, gender, all of those characteristics. And it's important that we have people who can be fair, who have integrity, and who have the right temperament. And in my background, I show fairness as a mediator. And when I worked with a federal court judge as well as a state court judge, certainly had to show integrity when I served 2 terms on Allegheny County Council as an elected official, and when I served on the Community Task Force on Police Reform, and when I served on the Port Authority Board of Allegheny County. And I certainly exhibit the right temperament because I always treat people with dignity and respect. That is at the core of what I do. It is at the core of who I am. And at a time when people are concerned about bias in our judicial system, when they're concerned about justice being accessible or attainable for them, as we see thousands of people in our streets over the past year, it's really important, especially important, that we have judges who exhibit the right temperament. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you, and I humbly ask you for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Next, we will have Judge Spurgeon to wrap up the 6 o'clock hour.
Trying to get to a little bit better place in reception for you.
No problem. I tell you what, I will put you in the waiting room, and then I'll try you back in about 15 minutes. Is that fair?
Perfect. Thanks. Appreciate it.
No All right, this wraps up our 6 o'clock hour. Appreciate, Ryan, for you coming out and giving us your time on a Saturday evening. So we'll take
Happy to do it anytime you need it.
I appreciate it. We'll take a 7-minute break. You want to give us a 15-second commercial about who you are and what you do and who you are representing?
Sure. Ryan Herbinko. I'm a practicing attorney in Allegheny County. I am also the co-host of Jack's Just a Couple Kids podcast. Just 2 local guys talking Pittsburgh politics. putting our own little spin on things, try to keep things light for the candidates and the politicos in the area.
You want to give us the website, how they can download that, or how they can figure that out?
Right, we are on every streaming platform, so Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and you can also find us on justacouplekids.com.
All right, I appreciate it, Ryan. Thanks for your time. We'll come back.
Thank you, Frank.
In 6 minutes, and we'll start our last hour at 7 o'clock. Thank you. All right, we're entering the last hour of the May 8th PBLA Forum. Next up, we're going to have Judge Street, but I do not see the judge in the waiting room. So I will keep her on pause, and we'll move to Judge McLaughlin. And there's like 2 or 3 Judge McLaughlins in here, so I'm just going to let them all in. Let's see what happens. All right, Judge. I see you. All right. Can you hear me okay?
I can, and forgive me for being in the vehicle because I am traveling from Schuylkill County.
No problem at all. I understand we're entering the final stretch and people are out there canvassing, doing what they need to do. So we have a couple questions for you. We have 5 minutes for you to respond to them. In the chat box, you'll see a 1 minute, a 30-second, a 10-second, and a time. So without further ado, we will begin.
What am I seeing? Wait a second. What am I supposed to be looking for?
You know what? Since I hope you're not driving. You're riding?
I am in the passenger seat.
Okay. Well, what I will do is I will tell you when we're at the 1 minute, 30-second, and 10-second mark. Okay?
Okay. So you want me to answer in how many minutes or whatever?
It'll be a total of 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
Yeah, ready.
All right. So please introduce yourself. Tell us where you currently serve and tell us what position you are seeking.
Okay. And so how long do you want me to do this for? I have, different stump speeches.
Well, this is just the beginning elevator, 15% who you are.
Okay. So I am Judge Maria McLaughlin. I am currently a judge on our Pennsylvania Superior Court, and I am running for the one open seat on our Pennsylvania Supreme Court. I don't have a Democratic primary. I am the Democratic nominee, but I do have a general election, and I'm happy to be here.
Okay. Well, thanks. We appreciate it. So, a couple questions. Mandatory sentences have been proven to be a destructive element, particularly in the Black community. Please give 3 specific examples of what you did as a DA to prevent the imposition of these sentences.
So as a district attorney, I worked in the civil unit, child support unit. So I didn't deal with mandatory sentences, but what I did do in the district attorney's office was implement a program that was never in effect until I did it with the ACLU and the court system, where you can go to jail, let's say, for example, for not paying your child support. You can go to jail for 6 months. In Philadelphia, where I was a district attorney, you could go to jail if you have multiple children with multiple partners. That could be 18 months. And so I didn't think that was right, that you could actually have a loss of liberty and not have the right to an attorney. So I worked with the courts and the ACLU and changed that. That was never done before I implemented it, and it's still in effect today, and it's 25 years later.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. This is the last question. What unique perspective will you bring to the Supreme Court?
Well, I think growing up with working family roots, first one in my family to go to college, my parents were uneducated, being a single mother, I think the perspective that I bring, never having a decision overturned. When I was a judge on the Court of Common Pleas in Philadelphia, the largest judicial district, where I sat between family and criminal, I think the fact that I never had a decision overturned speaks volumes to who I am and what kind of perspective I bring to that court. I think that treating everybody with dignity and respect, never forgetting, regardless of how high up that you get, that your decision affects the family. And I think if you keep that in check, you're always going to do the right thing.
Okay. Well, those are all the pre-submitted questions I have. We have a couple minutes left. If you want to fill that with any of your remaining remarks, feel free, have at it.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Pittsburgh is near and dear to my heart. When we preside in Philadelphia, Harrisburg, and Pittsburgh. I have family that live in Pittsburgh. But to me, The most important thing about my candidacy, I think, in 2017, when I ran for Superior Court, I was the only statewide candidate that went to all 67 counties. Why did I do that? First, out of respect, like I'm here today, zooming from the car, despite the fact of not having a primary, it's out of respect. If I want you to support me, I owe it to you to show up. And I did that in each and every county in Pennsylvania. But I also do it because I represent the entire state of Pennsylvania. So I think if there's something that you need to take from who Maria McLaughlin is, it's that. I pay the respect, and I never forget when I zip up my black robe. I may be wearing it, but it's all of ours. I know that. And I never forget where I come from. And I hope you'll watch my video on my website, because it really gives you a glimpse of who I am, and that's on judgemclaughlin.com. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Stay safe. If you or any of your campaign members are available to put your information in the chat, please do so, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, and Kevin Kinross is my Western PA chair, the same one I had when I was ran for Superior Court.
Okay, well, good to know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I can hear you. Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you and see you. Thank you very much. Again, apologies for the connection issue. Please introduce yourself, tell position what you're running for, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your elevator speech real quick.
Sure, appreciate it. I'm Judge David Spurgeon. I'm running for one of the two positions open on the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court. They're both held by Republican judges. I'm running for one of those two spots. I'm a judge in Allegheny County. I've been there for the last 5 years as a judge. I was nominated by Governor Wolf and unanimously confirmed by the state Senate. And I've served in the family division for the last 5 years, primarily in the juvenile section. I've also served in the orphans court division for termination of parental rights, as well as covered in the civil division when they were short as well. One of the things I'm most proud about is, as a judge in Allegheny County, I've never been overturned for a decision that I've made by a higher court. And I think that led me to the rating of highly recommended, the top rating that the Pennsylvania Bar Association gives. And I was honored to be a guy from McKeesport, went through the McKeesport Area School District, and then received the top rating that from anybody else in the entire state. So I was very proud of that. Prior to that, I spent 19 years in the DA's office, and I probably didn't plan on staying there that long, but I ended up sticking around because there were a lot of things I thought that I could do, and I think I did do, that made the system better than I found it. I was an advocate of our problem-solving courts. I supervised our mental health court unit, where we got people out of jail who had mental health issues and tried to give them the treatment and the services that they needed, and use the money that would have been used to house them to do those type of things. It was a very good program, and it was something that was very individualized with a team approach. And I also helped create our Veterans Court in Allegheny County, where we had soldiers coming back with traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, and they were using drugs and alcohol to cope for those two things. And we were able to get them on the right track. And I think the last time I had checked before I had left, I think the success rate was about 92% for Veterans Court, which shows that we have to treat people as individuals and develop a system for people that are one-on-one and not just treat everybody with the same brush. Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple questions, specific questions. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Can you tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client at trial? Please include the case type, the court, and what factors made that moment memorable.
Okay, well, I was a trial lawyer for almost 20 years. And one of the things I did was led the domestic violence unit in the DA's office. And I remember I was trying a homicide, and the only witness that could place the defendant at the scene of the crime was a 6-year-old boy. And that was very trying. He looked at this person as his father figure, who had killed his mother's new intimate partner. And she had left him at home with her son. The son opened the door because he recognized who was at the door. He opened the door and called for the guy. The guy came, and as soon as the guy came, he ended up killing him. And the most memorable thing was trying to get him to identify that person in the courtroom, and the ability for me I literally had to stand in front of the defendant so the defendant would not see him, and then he still wouldn't do it. So I ended up walking around the courtroom, and I told him to stop when I got close to the person he saw that killed his mom's new boyfriend. That's probably the most memorable. I always think about that case, and I always think about that little boy.
Okay, thank you. We got less than a minute left. In that less than a minute, can you give us what unique perspective will you bring to the Commonwealth Court?
I think I bring a very average person's working person's perspective. You know, coming from a key sport, being the first person in my family to graduate from college or law school, I think I bring a perspective that court needs. You know, as I said, there are 7 Republicans, 2 Democrats. I don't know if anybody else had to work 3 jobs in order to get through law school to work on that bench, to get to that bench. I'm not sure whether or not it's that everyday perspective of having a dad that worked in a union. It deals with so many union issues, dealing with that, and being a union member myself as a United Steelworker. So I think it's just a common approach to everyday people, because that court affects every single person on a daily basis without them realizing it.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. You're right at the time. Do you have any last minute thoughts in 10 seconds?
No, I just say highly recommended, endorsed by the state and endorsed by unions.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Stay safe. If you have the opportunity, please leave your information in the chat box. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
No problem.
Hey, Frank, great to see you. How are you?
Yes, good. My apologies. We had some technical difficulties. We were trying to bring in 2 people at once. I appreciate you being flexible here. So please take a moment to introduce yourself. Tell us what position you're running for and any rating you have with the Bar Association.
My name is Jill Beck. I am from Allegheny, highly recommended by the ACBA.
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. Okay. Good evening. My name is Jill Beck. I am running for Superior Court. The Allegheny County Bar Association has highly recommended me to be a Superior Court judge, and the Pennsylvania Bar Association has recommended me. The Superior Court is, of course, the Court of Appeals for criminal, civil, family, juvenile, and orphans court matters. Those are all areas where I have practiced and represented clients. I have tried over 1,400 cases in courts under the Superior Court's jurisdiction, practiced in the Superior Court itself, filing and defending appeals, and I spent 10 years on the other side of the bench where I drafted over 500 decisions while working for the Honorable Christine Donahue in her Superior and Supreme Court chambers.
Okay, thank you. Please tell us a memorable moment in court while you were representing a client in trial, and please include the case type, the court, and what factors made it a memorable moment.
With the first one would be my very presenting abused and neglected children. I had a witness on the stand. I was representing a young girl who was testifying and saying how she did not want to live with her mother. It was a dependency action because her mother had a drinking problem. The mother came into court, though very put together. It was, and she denied it completely. But I had a couple of other witnesses who got up and spoke the truth and told the court exactly what was going on and that the young girl was telling the truth. And the mother stood up, walked over to the witness and punched him in the face. So that was probably one of my more memorable. On the other side would have been a special immigrant to Pittsburgh from Guatemala. It was a race against jurisdiction. We were trying to get him adjudicated dependent in the Pennsylvania dependency courts, but immigration and customs enforcement had been notified about his whereabouts. And we were quite literally racing against the clock, to ensure that it was state court jurisdiction as opposed to federal jurisdiction. So that was another memorable moment for me in court.
Apologize. Keep going. Yeah, please.
I'm sorry. Did you ask me a question?
No. I apologize. It was breaking up a little bit. To let you know, please finish that thought. Go ahead.
Oh no, that was the other memorable moment in court was just trying to keep my cool and to represent my client and to do everything I needed to do to get him the substantial justice that he deserved, all while ensuring his safety and his ability to achieve substantial justice.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, what unique perspective will you bring to the Superior Court?
So in addition to my experience in the Superior Court and my knowledge of the law, I bring the perspective of the understanding of the human aspect of these cases. I've largely dedicated my career to public service, representing child abuse victims, victims of domestic violence, helping people who are experiencing housing insecurity through COVID, and helping people without money get the same rights and protections as people who do. I do that on the criminal and the civil side, partnering with neighborhood legal services to help people, and partnering with our public defender to help people, including those who were arrested following the murder of George Floyd. You know, for me, it is very important that all Superior Court decisions are made without bias or prejudice, because it doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, how you pray, who you love, or what your alleged you've done. And the perspective that I bring is one of equity, equality, and fairness. And I think that is an extremely important point of view to have.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We have a couple seconds left if you want to wrap up. And if also after the wrap up, please leave your information in the chat if you're able to.
I will do that. Thank you.
All right. Thank
you know, experience matters. Oh,
no,
experience matters on this court. You know, a Superior Court judge should have a Superior Court experience. It is not as simple as just having, what would I do differently? It is extremely important that a Superior Court judge understand the nuances of these decisions, because we are looking at cases from about 20,000 feet through a very narrow lens to ensure that a decision is legally supportable. It is a very, very important role. It is the last stop for about 97% of cases that come before the court. And so it is critical that these cases are done thoroughly, done fairly, and done correctly. And that is something that I will bring to the bench. I thank you very much for having me. I'll put my information in the chat. You can learn more about me at jillback.com. Thank you very much, Frank. Always great to see you.
Thank you. You also. Take care.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. How's everybody tonight?
Doing good. Doing well. Doing well.
Good.
All right. So a couple questions for you. Let me scroll down here. Before we get started, please take this time to introduce yourself. Tell us what position you are seeking and tell us any bar ratings you have.
Sure. I am running for Superior Court. I was recommended by the Bar Association.
Okay. Please tell us a memorable moment in court while you are representing a client in a trial. And please include the case type, the court, and what factors make the moment memorable to you.
So I assume you mean before I was a judge, when I was an attorney?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, no problem, because I'm the only judge in the race. I just want to make sure that it was, you know, the same question. I guess I would go back to when I was a public defender. And, you know, when you're a public defender, you just do the whole list. So you're in court every day before one judge. So I don't have the case site. And I've been on the bench since 13, so it's been a number of years at this point. But I represented this one lady. She was just coming there for a status hearing. And she was doing great on probation. I think it was for like retail theft or something. It was like non-violent. She had a baby and she was supposed to pay $50. And she didn't have $50. And I was like, well, I'm a public defender. I'm broke. I got 10. So I told the judge, and the judge thought it was disrespectful that this lady did not have $50 and would not even accept the $10. And I tried to tell her that $50 is a lot, and that this woman had to borrow bus fare to even get to court. And she had her baby because she couldn't find childcare. The judge thought it was all a ploy and a tactic, so she wouldn't go to jail. So she actually locked her up and then said, call child services to come get her baby. And I'm like, oh my God, no, judge, like, just let me try to find someone from her family so they can come get the baby. And so the judge said, okay, I'm gonna give you 1 hour, but you still have other matters on my list. I said, no problem. So I went and I tried the next case with that baby on my hip, and her father came when I was done and got that baby. And I never forget that case. That was one of the cases that I never forgot and propelled me to actually run for the Court of Common Pleas in 2013 because of people like that, because she didn't have $50. She was arrested and taken into custody right then and there in court.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And last, probably goes along with the story, please give us what unique perspective you will bring to the appellate court.
Me. You know, I was born and raised in this part of West Philly called the Bottom. So we had a strong sense of community, but we didn't have a lot materially. But we were a strong working class community. My grandmother worked in a cafeteria, and she always said that it wasn't, she's like, it's not about you, honey, or child. And she's right. And that's a great lesson to learn as a kid, that it is not about you. And it's not about me. And I've lived my life to serve others. And me running for the Superior Court is not about me. It is about making sure our voice is heard We know out of the 31 judges on our appellate courts here in Pennsylvania, we have one person of color, and that's Judge Carolyn Nichols. And we have to make sure that all voices are heard from all the communities in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And that's why I'm running. I'm running for us. And I am the only judge in this race and the only one with experience on both sides of the bench. And the Superior Court is just simply an error correcting court where they look at a trial court in which I sit day in and day out and make those hard decisions. I'm the only one who has authored opinions and made decisions in this race. So I see you looking at me. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up.
No.
Oh, you started going like that. I say, is that a signal?
No, you got a minute, 10 seconds, so you're good.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's a perfect reason. I was a public defender where I tried thousands of cases. I worked in the state senate fighting for us. I was a child advocate working on behalf of abused and neglected children. And also, I'm first generation college. I'm first generation law school. When I was in college, I was putting together boxes at the post office. I'm a single mom. When I was a public school teacher teaching 7th grade social studies, I was still working retail because I didn't make enough money to live. These are the voices we need on these appellate courts. If the Superior Court is the final stop for most people in Pennsylvania, let it be someone who has a real life experience here in Pennsylvania. You know what I mean?
Okay, all right.
And you guys know, oh, okay, you cut me off now. I was about to go on. You know how we do.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for being mindful of the time. If you have the opportunity, I don't want you to do it while you're driving, but you have the opportunity, pass the phone to somebody and they can put your information in the chat so people can reach out to your campaign and support you.
Absolutely, because I need y'all to show up and show out. We can flip this court. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go, but I need each and every one of you. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. Be safe.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
I'm in. I can hear you, Frank.
All right, thank you. Welcome. I appreciate it. Thanks for being patient with us on a Saturday evening. I really appreciate it. I know we're in the waning days of the campaign, so we'll get through this, okay?
No, I appreciate your having me here.
All right, no problem. We have 5 minutes to respond to a couple questions here, and you'll see Tom choose in the box here to the chat box. And at the end, if you have some time left over, feel free to leave your information in the chat and leave any parting remarks, okay?
Sure.
All right, so first, please introduce yourself, tell us what position you are seeking, and please tell us your bar rating from the ACBA or the PBA.
Okay, my name is Bryan Neft. I am from Allegheny County, and I am running for judge of the Pennsylvania Superior Court. The Allegheny County Bar Association rated me highly recommended for the position of judge of the Superior Court. The Pennsylvania Bar Association also recommended me. And in their recommendation, they said that my writing is skillful and shows a formidable knowledge of trial-related issues. And they lauded me for my hard work, for my diligence, for my community service, and my demeanor.
Okay, thank you. Please tell us a memorable moment in court while you are representing a client at trial. Please include the case type, the court, and what factors made it a memorable moment.
So it's funny when you can never tell what type of case or the type of case it is can be very technical. And this was what we call an ERISA case. And what I did was I represented a young couple that just had a premature baby. And the insurance company that covered the health insurance bills would refuse to cover the baby's health insurance, the neonatal expenses. You know how thousands of dollars that can cost because of neonatal care. And this family lived in Eastern Ohio, just across the border from West Virginia. And they'd given birth to their son in New Jersey, and the insurance company was in Pennsylvania. And I filed suit in West Virginia that had absolutely no connection to the case. But that was the closest courthouse they could get to file this ERISA claim. And I filed this claim saying that this insurance company owed these benefits to this family. And they tried to fight it. They kept saying this case belongs in New Jersey, this case belongs in Pennsylvania, this case belongs in Ohio, this case belongs anywhere but West Virginia. And the judge held it in. And he said, I'm keeping this case in West Virginia. As long as I can get jurisdiction nationally over the insurance company, it doesn't matter where this case is. And as soon as that ruling came down, the insurance company came to the table, paid the bills, and then paid my attorney's fees to boot. But the best part about it was going to the settlement. When you're dealing with minors, you have to petition the court for approval of the settlement. And nothing was more gratifying than having these parents there telling me that they were so satisfied with the fact that they got these bills paid and they approved that settlement. And that was just gratifying to me. When I can represent an individual like that and help them achieve their goals, and help them, prevent a financial disaster, that was an awesome experience.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, what unique perspective will you bring to the Superior Court?
So I've been, practicing now for 31 years. I clerked for a judge on the Pennsylvania Superior Court, Judge Bill Sircone, for 4 years, and I drafted hundreds of decisions for my judge in all of the areas that go before the Superior Court. And in my private practice, I've also practiced in all those areas. And I practiced before all the appellate courts in Pennsylvania, whether it's the Supreme Court, whether it's the Superior Court, whether it's the Commonwealth Court. But I could talk for hours on my career and everything that goes along with it. But I've been a leader in the Bar Association, and I've taken on some real priorities. One is the elimination of bias and discrimination in the profession of law and in the judiciary. I've taken on access to justice. I served as chair of the IOLTA board, where we, stretched every dollar to make sure we could maximize the number of people that could get legal services who otherwise couldn't afford it. And I chaired the Attorneys Against Hunger campaign in Allegheny County that raises millions of dollars for hunger relief in Allegheny County. I understand, you learn about people by trying to help all the different communities that I've tried to help. And you learn about people, and you learn empathy for everybody. And when they come into my courtroom, they're going to get the utmost respect, dignity, and opportunity to have their case heard. And that's what I bring to the table.
Well, thank you. You believe you're right at the 1 minute mark. So if you have any parting remarks, feel free to offer them right now.
No, I would just say, there's a lot of information out there on me and my opponents in this election. The PBA has our questionnaires, they have our ratings, they have our the evaluations. Everybody should go research that and find out more about us. And you will find I am candidate second to none. And I appreciate the time that you've had me here, and I will put my information in the chat room.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Great to be with you, Frank.
Thank you.
Can hear you, Frank.
All right, got you. All right, well, welcome. Appreciate you coming in on a Saturday evening, spending some time with us. We'll have a couple questions for our moderator, will be Mr. Jenkins. And before we go, return it over to him, you'll have 5 minutes to respond to each of the questions. There'll be some time markers in the chat box at 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and time. If at the end you have additional time left over, you're welcome to give any remarks other than the response to the question. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Jenkins.
Good evening, Judge. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us what position you're seeking?
First of all, I'd like to thank the Pittsburgh Black Lawyers Alliance for an invitation to participate in today's forum. My name is Scott Schricker. I am currently the Magisterial District Judge serving the communities of Braddock, Duquesne, East Pittsburgh, North Braddock, and Pearl. I'm in my 18th year in that I've served in that capacity.
Okay. Could you tell us what 3 things you have done to ensure equality in your courtroom?
Well, first of all, everybody that walks into my courtroom, I don't care who they are, they're all equal in the eyes of the law. I've always tried to be fair, impartial every step of the way. 3 things, everything I do is about fairness in the courtroom. So to give you 3 things, I make sure that everybody has the opportunity to have counsel. I recommend that they have counsel. We help find them counsel. Listen to everything they have to say. So, about that.
Okay. And do you have any statistics regarding cash bail?
Yes. Last year, I had approximately 900 felony misdemeanor indictable cases filed. I set 1 cash bond last year.
Okay. So we're doing really good on time. Do you have any really good on time? Do you have any closing remarks that you want the voters to know before they go to the polls or submit their ballots?
Yeah, I'd say to you that of those 900 cases, about 700 of those cases actually went to hearings. 380 of those were resolved at my level at court with alcohol treatment, domestic violence treatment, mental health treatment. The remaining would have been remanded to trial. Treatment of underlying issues should always take a part in the court. We have to balance bond with protecting the rights of rape and other violent crime victims. So it's things that we're talking about today with no cash bail, I don't think you should ever limit the tools in the tool belt. We do have to balance that. So that's what I would have to finish saying about cash bail. And I like people to understand that, you know, what the job of a judge is, and at my level of judge. And the easiest way to do that is to compare it as like a baseball umpire. Okay, so the umpire calls balls and strikes after the pitch is thrown and not before, without changing the strike zone for each side. Any change in that strike zone or a predetermination of what the pitch would be would make the game unfair, and it should be unacceptable. So a good judge, like a good umpire, should always be consistent in everybody that comes to court. I'd also like to say, for, you know, today, there's a push for judges to legislate from the bench. And while I respect people that have that opinion, I think that they're better suited in a role as a legislator, because in my opinion, it's inappropriate for any judicial officer to attempt to legislate from the bench. And my record on that has always been clear. I apply the laws fairly, consistently, without regard to race, color, nationality, religion, sex, age, disability. And I've also always tried to conduct my own private affairs as if they were public, so as to not to bring disrespect to the office that I hold. In closing, I thank you for the time, if that's all that you have, Mr. Jenkins. You know me, I'm a few words. I just appreciate the time that we've had today.
Certainly.
I promise to be the shortest speaker today.
Okay, and I would also say you can put your information in the chat.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I can hear you. All right. Appreciate it. Well, thanks. I appreciate you coming in on a Saturday evening. I know we're in the final stretch of the race, so a lot of people are out canvassing, doing all types of things. So appreciate you spending some time with us. We have a couple questions for you. This will come from the moderator, Mr. Teron Jenkins. But before I turn it over to him, please be mindful of the chat. I don't know if it's to your left, right. You look like you're in a car. I hope you're not driving. And maybe at the bottom of your screen. But we'll give you warnings at 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and time. And at the end, you have additional time, feel free to leave any part of remarks. And always, when we part ways, please make sure you leave your information in the chat so people can contact your campaign, okay?
Yes, sir. Well, unfortunately, I was just informed of the forum by another candidate. So that's why I'm in my car. I was actually out on the campaign trail, like you said. So I apologize that I'm in my car for miscommunication. Yes, sir. So
right, I'll turn it over to Mr. Jenkins.
How are you, Mr. Baldwin? Can you start by introducing yourself and tell us what position you're running for?
Very good, sir. Very good, sir. Thank you for having me. My name is Demetrius Baldwin, candidate for magistrate in the Mon Valley, encompassing Braddock, North Braddock, Turtle Creek, East Pittsburgh, and Duquesne.
Okay. Now, your incumbent has more experience than you. What characteristics do you possess that you feel makes you a strong candidate?
So I think it's about my life experience and it's about my career experience to date. I went to a high school in Wheeling, West Virginia with people from all over the world. And in doing so, it gave me a level of cultural competence and like an anthropological perspective where I love cultures. I love different, different cultures, people of different backgrounds, and having that kind of understanding, I think brings a lot to the bench, especially in a place like, the Mon Valley. In addition to that, my career experience, having worked with people suffering from mental health and addiction, and having worked specifically with groups that were coming out of the Department of Corrections and seeking treatment as a condition of their release. And so working with those groups of people, I understand the ways in which our judicial system needs to change in order to better serve those groups and individuals. And then the latest thing that I've been doing is working in the second largest county in the state, trying to offer equity and support to the most marginalized groups in our school system. And so working with young people, understanding the needs and the diversionary programs that we can utilize in our toolbox as magistrates to support people and positively impact them in their lives.
Okay. So what 3 things will you do to ensure equality in the courtroom? Could you hear me?
Yep, I got you. I'm just trying to unmute myself. So the first thing I think is really about your judicial philosophy. And the judicial philosophy I'm trying to bring to the bench is about equity, integrity, and accountability. The equity piece of that answers a lot of this question, but it's taking the unique humanity of every person into account when they come in front of you. Each individual is different, and you have to be able to recognize the needs of that individual in order to support them. The integrity piece is just showing people respect and offering them the tools needed so that they are productive and active members in the judicial process when they come in front of the bench. And lastly, that accountability piece is really about creating community action groups that that create transparency in the judicial system for the community, so that they understand the things that we understand the things that they need in order to support them, but also that they have the tools in their toolbox to be, like I said before, active participants in the judicial process.
Okay, very good. We're still good on time. If you want to give a closing statement and also use this opportunity to put your information in the chat.
So I need for people to understand that this election is the most important election of our lives, really. Having magistrate candidates as well as Court of Common Pleas candidates that know who you are, care about who you are, and want to do things to support you and make your life have a positive impact on your life is important. It does not matter who our president is. It does not matter who our governor is. If the person that when you get a speeding ticket doesn't care about your humanity. So I ask that you please vote Baldwin for change. We are rethinking justice in the Mon Valley on May 18th. And, if you want to get in touch with our campaign, it's baldwinforchange.com. And then it is at @vote4 Baldwin on Facebook. Please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. And next we will have Leah Duncan, Leah Williams Duncan. All right. Welcome, Leah.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Good, good, good. I believe you are our last candidate. So you have an opportunity you'll have like 4 hours to just say whatever you want to say. Hopefully we can reduce it down to 5 minutes. But 5 minutes, we'll ask you a couple questions about your campaign, and then we'll give you an opportunity in the end to wrap up and also leave your information in the chat so people can contact your campaign. So first, please introduce yourself. Tell us what position you are seeking, and please let us know of any endorsements or ratings that you may have.
Okay, thank you. I'm Leah Williams Duncan. I am running for magisterial district judge in Pittsburgh's 26th and 27th wards. That's the upper north side. I currently serve as a hearing officer in the family division. I've been doing that for 20 years. I conduct hearings in matters of child support, family support, criminal contempt, and civil contempt. I rule on matters of law, objections, evidence, anything basically that happens in the Court of Common Pleas happens in my courtroom. Endorsement, the Allegheny County Democratic Black Caucus, and then a number of elected officials that I don't think I need to go into, but that's me in a nutshell.
All right, so you had mentioned a one-stop legal center and legal forums. Please explain about what exactly that is and how would you use that, how as a magistrate, how would you implement that vision?
Sure. My vision for the Magisterial District Justice Court in my district has to do with educating our residents and generally in matters of law, matters of procedure. And that's basically so that, every time they need a form or every time they need a question answered, they don't necessarily have to run downtown. I'm trying to take some of the burden off of the courts downtown. So for the Layman in the Law series, since I know so many attorneys, my vision is to have quarterly forums and just to pick a topic, maybe criminal law or family law, and invite the public to come in and just learn, basic legal procedure, basic law, so that they, even when they have to go to court, they'll have a working knowledge of what to expect if and when they have to go downtown. Okay. And then I also want to have, basically every form that they would need, before they have to go downtown and get it, that they'd be able to stop in, in my magisterial district court and pick those things up.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, what specific 3 things will you do to ensure equality in your courtroom?
Equality or a quality courtroom? I'm sorry.
Equality.
Equality. Okay, thank you. You know, absolutely. It's what I've been doing for 20 years. And I've had to, and you know, my 20 years of presiding over cases as a hearing officer, I think we all come into certain situations with certain biases. And so in those 20 years, I've really learned how to check my own biases. But more than that, you know, I've learned how to listen. And everyone who comes into my courtroom, they have their day in court. You know, they know that they're heard, and it doesn't always go in their favor. You know, we have an adversarial, you know, that's the process. But, you know, when someone walks out of my courtroom, they've had their day in court. They know that it's been fair. They've been listened to. And I think a lot of people can say what they think they do, you know, in this position, but I've actually been doing it for 20 years. And I think that the greatest skill that I've honed in is how to listen, you know, listen to both sides, not make snap decisions, not make snap judgments, really hear both sides before I make any decisions. So again, I've been doing that for 20 years. And I think I know I do a good job at it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, we have yet to reach the 1 minute mark. So you probably have a little bit over 1 minute. Any parting remarks you want to make? And then after those remarks, please make sure to leave your information in the chat.
I sure will. You know, it's my understanding, well, I know that there are currently no Black women serving as magisterial district judge in the city of Pittsburgh. Kim Hoots is the only Black woman in our county who serves as magisterial district judge. When we talk about how divided our city is, you know, our communities are, you know, tend to be divided. For me, I live in a community that's probably 70% white, 30% Black. But, you know, I am the most qualified candidate in my race. And I'm really hoping that, you know, my election, I want to make history, and that my election will signal, you know, some move towards that progressive city that Pittsburgh claims to be. So with the, you know, the qualifications and the background that I'm bringing to the table, you know, for this position, I think it'll go a long way in, you know, moving Pittsburgh forward.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Again, please leave your information in the chat, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. I will make sure that there are no other candidates in the waiting room. Mr. Smith and Judge Martin were invited, and Raven Robinson were invited. I'll make sure that they're not in the waiting room. I'm not missing anyone. I do not see them. So this will conclude our May 8th forum. I appreciate everyone coming out, your time, and sticking with us. Thank you both, especially to our moderators that we've had, we had Mikey Hood, Kiki Brown, Ryan Herbinko, Teron Jenkins, and myself. We appreciate everyone giving us their opportunity and their time and attention today. Our next forum will be in August. Let me check the date here. That will be for the general election. It will be August 14th at 4 o'clock. We will have elections and candidates for all of the positions here. But we'll also send invitations for people who are candidates for Mayor of Pittsburgh. We'll send those invitations out also. But that will be on August 14th at 4 o'clock. Matter of fact, I will copy the invitation and put it in the box right now. If you want to copy and register right now for free at that time. But with that, without further ado, we appreciate everyone coming out. Thank you for your time. This recording will be made available on YouTube and on the Facebook group of thepbla.org. And have a good evening, everyone. Stay safe. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers.